Chapter 282. In that case, I will have to reluctantly continue to be your fourth and fifth man. Immerse gently stroked Tongning's hair and placed a kiss on her forehead. Immerse gently stroked Tongning's hair and placed a kiss on her forehead. You don't need to worry about anything else. All you need to do is be in your best condition when you see Claudine. Afterwards, you will be able to get your hands on Claudine. You always seem to have so much confidence in me. By the way, will second uncle find out about the photos? Will he be interested in me? Tongning was worried about the way the Immerse family looked at her. Second uncle will only blame me for not taking good care of you, Tongning said as she snuggled up to Immerse. Tongning snuggled up tightly to Immerse because he was the only person she could rely on, the husband she trusted, admired, and treasured the most. Don't worry, with you by my side, I will only become stronger, Tongning replied confidently. Your status in Beijing has already stabilized. If possible, you can spend a little more time interacting with your fans. Now that the photos have been exposed, your fans are worried. In a moment, we will not take the VIP route. We will take the normal route to let your fans know that you are doing well. I've always felt that the people I owe the most are my fans. Although I've given it my all, without their support, I wouldn't be where I am today. Tongning nodded in agreement. Thank you, hubby. I will listen to your arrangements. I am now your manager. Your hubby will only be online at 8 p.m. Tongning let out a laugh. Afterwards, the two did not take the VIP route. Tongning and Immerse both wore sunglasses. Although they had only walked a short distance of 200 meters, countless fans still noticed them. They surrounded them, took photos, shook hands, and asked for autographs. Of course, because of Immerse's presence, they did not dare to be too presumptuous. But Tongning signed everyone she saw and tried her best to satisfy everyone's wishes. Tongning, is that really you kissing in the photo? Who is that man? Tongning, do you really have 3 men? Hearing the fans' questions, Tongning couldn't help but turn around as she walked. 3 men? You will need to ask the person beside me if he agrees. The fan glanced at Immerse and shrunk back as she smiled awkwardly. I think this is all nonsense. After all, you have President Immerse by your side. Even if you had 100 men, they wouldn't be able to compare to one. You have good taste, Tongning praised. Afterwards, Immerse held onto her head as they entered the ticket booth. Many fans captured the loving scene and felt the Tongning they were interacting with today was a little different from the cold and distant Tongning they usually saw. She still walked quickly and wore her sunglasses. But there were also times when she smiled warmly and wasn't completely cold. Was this change brought to her by Immerse? Hello everyone. Welcome back to the entertainment industry. If we are to talk about the most popular model of the moment, we have to mention Hirue's Tongning. With her perfect long legs and her professional catwalk, as soon as she appears on stage, she will definitely be the center of attention. However, recently, someone leaked a photo of Tongning kissing a man and hinted that Tongning has more than one man. I would like to say that the reason Tongning is doing so well right now is all because of her own hard work, one step at a time. How could anyone have the heart to slander such a hard-working girl? Today, some onlookers saw Tongning on a flight to France. Rumor has it that she was invited by Claudine. Oh God, this is a huge incident in the modeling industry. Above all, Tongning was very relaxed the entire time. She wasn't affected by the photo scandal at all. It seems a capable person will never let the anger of others stop them from moving forward. By now, Tongning was already a regular on the entertainment news. Of course, by going to France in such a sensational manner, didn't it serve as a reminder to those that were busy checking their itinerary? Whether it was Quan Yi or Huarong's editor Lin, both of them booked tickets to France to catch a glimpse of Tongning. Not only did Quan Yi want to show up in front of Tongning, he also hired an expert photo manipulator to completely swap out his photo with Immerse's body before posting it to the public. Judging by how much Immerse valued Tongning, if he hurt her, it would be the same as hurting Immerse. Since he couldn't compare to Immerse in any way, all he could do was play around with Tongning. He wanted to see how many people would still believe her. But, since Immerse told them to take the normal route, he must have considered the consequences. That night, Fang Yu was a little worried about Hua Jingjing and Fang Yu, so he took the rest of his work home. He gently unlocked the front door. A moment later, Fang Yu saw an adult and a child sleeping on the sofa in the living room. Meanwhile, Hua Jingjing was hugging Fang Yu. They were extremely close. Fang Yu was a little touched. He gently knelt down in front of the sofa and looked at the couple for quite some time. In the end, he realized they weren't covered in blankets, so he quickly ran into the bedroom and pulled out a blanket to help them sleep more comfortably. No woman would ever accept another woman's child, right? With this thought, Fang Yu stood up and tiptoed back to his study room. Hua Jingjing had actually woken up a long time ago. As she felt Fang Yu's gaze on the couple, she was extremely nervous. But she could also hear Fang Yu's sigh. Soon, it was the second half of the night. Fang Yu stared at his computer the entire time. It was finally his turn to stand up for Hua Jingjing. Every hour, he would release a piece of news about IY. Every time the audience thought this was the lowest he could go, he would always reveal something even more shocking. 3 a.m., a certain social media site was forced to crash by the netizens because of this incident. One of the 10 biggest shady dealings in IY. Is the transformation of special services complete? Undercover revealed. 2 of the 10 biggest shady dealings in IY. A model once refused to go on stage and his body was thrown into the deep sea. 3 of the 10 biggest shady dealings in IY. The police have tried to subpoena him multiple times, but he has a gangster background. After a sleepless night, Fang Yu finally returned to his bedroom early the next morning. Meanwhile, Hua Jingjing was woken up by the sound of her phone ringing. The caller ID showed it was her manager. Jingjing, have a look at the news online. It's blown up. After hanging up the phone, Hua Jingjing immediately logged onto a social media site and saw the latest development of the IY incident. It turned out the person in charge had been subpoenaed by the police. All it took was one night. Had Immerse and Fang Yu destroyed an entire brand? Of course, it couldn't be said that they had destroyed the brand. How could they destroy a den of thieves just like that? Did they have to be so cool? Before she became friends with Fang Yu and Tongning, she had always been on her own. So, she had never experienced the charm of a man. It turned out, there was indeed a difference between a man and a crying woman. Especially Fang Yu. She could feel a sense of security from up close. It was no wonder that even though they weren't blood-related, they still looked so similar because they were blood-related. Outsiders couldn't say anything about it. You see, even if he isn't my biological son, I still have to shoulder this responsibility. My partner can't explain this to others, so I can understand. Hua Jingjing nodded. She was already satisfied that Fang Yu was willing to tell her this. So, you are still clean. But I've never looked down on you and I'm not afraid of being laughed at. It's just, being with me will be tough. Think about the things that will be exposed in the future. You should know it won't be easy. Hua Jingjing lifted her head and smiled. I'm not Tongning. I can't be as smart as her and counter everything. You're also not President Mo. You can't be as strategic as President Mo and calculate everything perfectly. So, they are a match made in heaven. But, as long as you don't look down on me, I'm willing to give it a try. I'm sure I still have the strength to love, no matter how much I've been hurt in the past. Hearing this, Fang Yu pulled Hua Jingjing into his embrace and hugged her. This was the most valuable thing about Hua Jingjing. She still had the ability to love. His body was broken, but his soul was resplendent. I'm warning you, you can't go back on your word. Do your parents know about you, heir? Because they don't know, when they found out I had a daughter of unknown origin, they broke up with me. It turned out, they were both scapegoats. So, on the surface, everyone was wearing a mask. But, the pain in their hearts could only be understood and felt by the same people. It's okay, let's continue on together. As soon as Tongning arrived in France, the first phone call she made was from Hua Jingjing. As her best friend, Hua Jingjing naturally wanted to tell Tongning about her relationship with Fang Yu. Unfortunately, the first thing Tongning did after arriving in France was adjust to jet lag. As for the person who picked up the phone, it was naturally Manager Mo. What is it? President Mo. Where's Tongning? She's sleeping. Tell me. I'll pass on the message. Immerse's voice was calm and emotionless. How could she tell a man about something so private? So, Hua Jingjing hung up the phone. Immerse put down his phone and continued to watch Tongning in his arms. He forcefully called Claude in as he watched over Tongning while she slept. Not long after, Mo Ting received a phone call from Fang Yu. This time, he called to report on Huarong's studio. President, we've searched through Huarong's base and found a few bits and pieces of evidence, including the photo of Tongning kissing. So, we can conclude that Huarong was the one that leaked the photo. They sure have hidden themselves well. No matter how deep, we still need to dig, even if we have to dig 3 feet underground, Mo Ting replied in a low voice. He then added, "Don't worry, perhaps they will follow us to France." Obviously, the photo wasn't deliberately leaked. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to hide it for so long. This is also the reason why they needed to escape, Fang Yu analyzed. No matter what, President Liu Che and I will quickly find out more information about the person in charge. I hope he doesn't cause any more trouble. But he's here to cause trouble. If we can even deal with IY, why can't we deal with Huarong's studio? Fang Yu was in a good mood. He was in high spirits. Perhaps we can make use of them and beat them at their own game. President Mo, you mean, let's play according to Huarong Studio's plan. Let's see how many people want to get involved and deal with them all at once. So, let's see what else Huarong Studio wants. The reason why Mo Ting dared to play this game was because he had the leverage of his marriage with Tongning. Anything that Huarong said, he could find evidence to refute. Perhaps he really needed to bring forward a certain matter. Would Tongning blame him? Chapter 284. After their honest discussion that morning, the relationship between Hua Jingjing and Fang Yu had changed. They had successfully become boyfriend and girlfriend. So, she was now able to stay at Fang Yu's home, even though IY's crisis had been resolved. After breakfast, Hua Jingjing and Fang Yu played with building blocks in the living room. After washing up, Fang Yu entered the living room and crossed his arms as he asked Hua Jingjing, "Aren't you going to get changed?" Hua Jingjing did not look at Fang Yu. She continued to play with the building blocks as she replied, "I'll leave tonight. If I go out now, I might be surrounded by reporters again." Fang Yu understood that she wanted to spend a little more time with Fang Yu, so he did not refute and allowed her to stay. "I'm also taking the day off today." Hua Jingjing lifted her head as her eyes lit up. She originally wanted to find a place to develop their relationship, but when she thought about their identities, she lowered her head in disappointment. They were currently in the middle of a storm. It was best if she didn't create too much trouble for Fang Yu. Fang Yu seemed to understand what Hua Jingjing was thinking, so he said, "In a moment, the auntie will come and take care of Xiao Yu. Come to the study room later." "What for? Do you still want to accept the job like IY? You have an international status. The commotion this time has already lowered your value. Your manager will have to take responsibility." In reality, IY's incident had nothing to do with her manager. Hua Jingjing was the one who wanted to escape and get back to work. That was why she accepted the job without fully understanding it. But who was she doing it for? So, Hua Jingjing asked Fang Yu, "What identity are you using to say this to me? It seems, no matter what identity I use, I can control you." Fang Yu did not fall for her trap. Was she joking? If he could be shut down by a single sentence from Hua Jingjing, then he could forget about his position as the director of PR. Perhaps it was because his words were too powerful. Hua Jingjing finally blushed. Of course, her heart felt like it was being washed by a warm spring. It was sweet and a little cloying, but it was a wonderful feeling. If they continued to argue, who knew how much happiness they would miss out on? Luckily, she realized this early on. "Okay, I'll keep Xiao Yu company for a little while longer." Fang Yu nodded his head as he carried the glass of milk into the study room. Afterwards, he continued with his task, gathering information on Huarong's studio, especially when he thought about what Mo Ting said the day before. Fang Yu immediately contacted a friend at Beijing Airport and did a background check on all passengers with the surname Lin. In the end, he locked onto a tall and skinny man called Lin Chong. Fang Yu sent a message to Mo Ting. Because Tongning had seen him the most, she was able to confirm his identity with one glance. This man is accompanied by a man and a woman. That woman is quite interesting. Guess who she is? Fang Yu replied in a serious tone after waiting for a few seconds. Charlene. Lin Chong and Lin Imo were far from Lin. In Lin Chong and Lin Yu, Imo, Lin Chong and Yun. Seeing Imo Ting, Fong Yu, and Lu Che's video chat, Tongning realized Imo Ting had not rested since landing. So, she stood up to prepare a bath for Imo Ting and called the hotel to ask the waiter to prepare some food for him. Lu Che will fly over from France tomorrow to help. Fong Yu will continue to monitor the situation in Beijing. 10 minutes later, Imo Ting turned off his computer. Tongning pulled out a bathrobe and handed it to him. Go have a bath and then come out to eat something. Imo Ting held onto his neck and did not take the bathrobe. Instead, he tilted his head and asked, "You want me to wash myself? I've washed it. Help me wash up." After speaking, Imo Ting stood up and pulled Tongning into the bathroom. Inside the misty bathroom, the two were enveloped in a layer of smoke. After removing his clothes, Imo Ting lay down in the bathtub, exhausted. She pulled out the essential oils prepared by the hotel and sat on the edge of the bathtub as she massaged his shoulders. "Are you feeling better?" Imo Ting did not say a word. Tongning looked down and saw Imo Ting had fallen asleep. Unsuspecting, he slept soundly. Tongning did not wake him, nor did her slender hands stop massaging him. It was not until 20 minutes later that Tongning realized the water had turned cold. Only then did she wake him up. "Go sleep on the bed." Imo Ting got out of the bathtub. Tongning immediately handed him a clean towel and ordered, "Lean against the sink. I'll help you shave." Imo Ting put on a bathrobe and obediently followed her instructions. Tongning stood between Imo Ting's legs and rubbed the shaving foam around Imo Ting's lips. Just as she was about to use a razor to clean his lips, Imo Ting suddenly pressed his lips down. Tongning swallowed the foam a few times as she struggled. "Why are you so tired? Do you still have energy? Wifey, are you doubting my stamina?" Tongning was about to explain that she simply wanted Imo Ting to get some rest. But Imo Ting suddenly wrapped his arm around her slender waist and lifted her robe. "You're always so energetic." "Because I need to recharge my batteries," and this was the best way to recharge them. The couple intertwined until the latter half of the night. Just before they fell asleep, Imo Ting suddenly said to Tongning, "Tomorrow, I will be meeting with the French director to discuss a film. Come with me." Tongning smiled tiredly as she nodded her head. Imo Ting had always been like this. Although he was Tongning's manager, as long as Hai Rui had a collaboration with France or other work, he would also make arrangements to optimize the way he handled things. The meeting with Claude In is scheduled for the morning of the day after tomorrow. So, I need to deal with some other work first. Originally, I wanted you to continue resting, but the French director's wife is also a supermodel and she is currently in the US. Before she left her 2-year-old daughter in his care. He can't come by himself. Help me take care of him tomorrow. I have never taken care of a child before. Then, treat it as an early experience. In the future, we will also have children. Okay. Tongning was exhausted from the previous relationship, so she did not think about why she needed to take care of a director's child. He could easily arrange anything he wanted. Imo Ting did not explain. He simply lowered his head and placed a kiss on Tongning's forehead. "Go to sleep." Hearing these 2 words, Tongning subconsciously found a more comfortable position in Imo Ting's embrace. Imo Ting wrapped his arms around her tighter and turned off the bedside lamp. He then fell asleep with his wife. Why did they have to make such arrangements? It was to give Hua Rong a chance to collect material. If they didn't give them a taste of the sweetness, how could they force them to reveal their trump card? What else did they have in their hands? What they planned to do and why they hadn't revealed it yet? They needed to give him an answer. As for Quan Yi, he wanted to see how the clown was going to play. Chapter 285. The meeting with the French director was arranged to be held at the director's manor. Imo Ting and Tongning quietly made their way there. However, halfway there, Imo Ting noticed a black car following behind them. It wasn't hard to tell because the camera was reflective, but Imo Ting pretended not to see anything as his lips curved into a smile. He then sped up the car and drove into the manor's parking lot. Only when she saw the man in person did Tongning realize that the French director Imo Ting wanted to meet was Coke. He was internationally famous and had even won an Academy Award for Best Director. However, over the past 2 years of marriage, In order to focus on taking care of his wife and daughter, his films had decreased in number. Perhaps it was because his wife wasn't around, but Coke couldn't take care of his daughter on his own. As a result, the little rascal clung to his leg and rubbed against him, but she continued to act mischievously and refused to eat breakfast. Coke's image was a little bad, so he smiled apologetically at Tongning and Imo-ting. I'm sorry, I don't think I can discuss a collaboration with you. To be honest, I never intended to. Imo-ting let out a gentle laugh and pointed to Tongning. My wife should be able to help you solve this problem. As for a collaboration, I think you might be interested. Coke looked Tongning up and down as he adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. You guys have kids too? No, but my wife is very gentle and considerate. I think she's a little better than you, Mr. Coke, Imo-ting replied straightforwardly. Coke shrugged his shoulders in embarrassment. In that case, I'll have to trouble you. Tongning's French wasn't any worse than Imo-ting's. So, she walked up to the little girl and carried her daughter in her arms. She then said to the two men, You guys go ahead and discuss business. Leave the child with me. I will take good care of her. If there's really no other way, I'll ask the auntie for help. Imo-ting looked at Tongning carrying the child and felt his heart skip a beat. He lowered his head and asked, Are you sure it's okay? Uh-huh. Tongning nodded. Don't underestimate her. Coke looked at his daughter in surprise. She did not resist and was surprisingly obedient in Tongning's arms. He then asked in dissatisfaction, Why can't I carry you? The little girl immediately giggled as she wrapped her arms around Tongning's neck. It seemed this child was only interested in looks. Afterwards, the two men entered the study room to discuss their partnership. Meanwhile, Tongning carried the child to the grass in the garden. As she had asked the maids, the grass had been specially treated, so Tongning sat on the ground with the child in her arms. The little girl's name was Kathy. She was a very lively little girl. Luckily, Tongning was very patient with her. Director Coke's previous film, Desert Escape, broke box office records in Europe and America, but it did not break into the Asian market. I admit that too, Coke said in a serious tone. After all, there is a huge difference between Eastern and Western cultures. Plus, you should know that I don't film Eastern films. I feel like it would ruin my reputation. I don't like to use Eastern actors because most of them have zero acting skills. The East does indeed have more celebrities than actors. But I think you should look at the script first before giving me an answer. Actors have never been a problem. Imo-ting pulled out the script and placed it in front of the woman. Think about it. Coke glanced at the cover of the script. It wasn't anything fancy or eye-catching. It was just a simple script for the movie Stupid Idiot. It was a very interesting name. Coke could not wait to open the script. The story was about a talented athlete who had a one-night stand with an actress and gave birth to a child. For the sake of his own status, he decided to give the child away. However, a few years later, he finally got married. However, he discovered that he had lost the ability to have children due to excessive exercise. So, he divorced his wife and adopted a disciple. However, this disciple turned out to be the stupidest child in the world. No matter how simple the task was, no matter how many times he tried to teach the child, he would never learn it. Worst of all, he discovered that he had no way of contacting the child's parents. So, when he felt he had been cheated, he repeatedly abandoned the child. In the end, the child was adopted by his enemies. They discovered his talents and groomed him to become a talent. The child had the same athletic talent as him and had broken countless world records. However, when the child stood on the podium, he only had one sentence in his mouth. My biological father abandoned me 12 times. I want to prove to him that he is a jerk. After reading through the script, Coke slapped his thigh. Amazing. Truly amazing. In that case, Mr. Coke, do you still want to reject it? Imo-ting asked confidently as he stroked his lower lip. This is only a rough outline, yet it's already so amazing. Then, Coke's eyes lit up. I agree to join, but, as an actor, I can guarantee that my acting will be perfect. Okay. Coke nodded his head in agreement. Not long after, the two men heard the sound of laughter coming from the garden. Coke held onto his script and looked out the window. Seeing Tongning hugging Kathy and rolling around on the ground, He laughed. Your wife seems to like children a lot. Have you decided to keep them? I want her to enjoy a few more years of being doted on like a daughter by me. After all, a woman has a lot more fetters in her life than a man. After becoming a mother, she will naturally have fetters. Coke nodded his head. President Mo is right. If my wife hadn't gone to the US to work and given me this opportunity, I would never have known that taking care of a child is so tiring. Your wife is very fortunate. Yes, I am. Since that's the case, I have nothing else to think about. Let's sign the contract. I'm sure this film was created by a man that loves his wife dearly. He will be more caring and strict than anyone else. Just like your child. Emoting looked at Tongning in the distance and smiled. I can't deny that after having her, I feel like everything I do has meaning. Mr. Coke, do you have a pair of binoculars? Yes. Let me borrow them. Coke handed the binoculars to Emoting curiously. Afterwards, Emoting used the binoculars to scan their surroundings. As expected, he discovered a group of fearless people hanging from a tree with a camera attached to it. Their filming skills were indeed good. Too bad. Someone is following you? These paparazzi are so annoying, Coke said angrily as he watched Emoting put away the binoculars. I can't help it. My wife is too famous, Emoting explained. She is also a model. I hope you guys are careful. Coke and Emoting shook hands again before sitting down and continuing to sign the contract. As for the group of fearless paparazzi, so, these were Editor Lin's subordinates. Was everyone here? Chapter 286. After discussing the deal, Coke wanted to invite the couple to dinner, but Emoting politely declined. The couple bid farewell to Coke in the manor before Emoting drove Tongning back to the hotel. On the way back, Emoting couldn't help but ask, how does it feel to interact with your child? I can't take it. Tongning thought for a moment before replying, Kathy is too naughty? All right, I'll remember it, Emoting suddenly said. From now on, our children can't be too naughty, Emoting replied in seriousness. Tongning let out a gentle laugh and looked at Emoting. What do you think a child is? You can even filter them? I can teach. As soon as Tongning heard these words, she suddenly imagined her strict father, Emoting, sitting on the sofa in the living room while a little radish stood in front of him and apologized. Just thinking about it made her feel good. Do you really want it? This time, Emoting shook his head in seriousness. Wait a few more years. Right now, I just want to dote on you. Tongning originally wanted to lean into Emoting's driver's seat and plant a kiss on his cheek, but Emoting reminded her, it's dangerous, sit tight. Is it danger, or is someone following us? Did you think, with my sensitivity, I wouldn't have noticed the black car following us? That camera was too reflective. It pierced my eyes a few times. Just now at the manor, there were also pictures of me and Calf together, right? What's going on? The people from Huarong's studio are following us, Emoting said. As expected, he couldn't look down on his woman. His observation was very detailed. What do they want? According to the comments that they left on the internet, they are probably trying to slander you for having a lot of men. Now they are collecting more evidence. So, you played along? Tongning guessed, but I can't wait any longer. I want to take this opportunity to announce our relationship. I want to tell everyone that you are my wife and the woman I cherish the most. But if I were to announce it to the public, Huarong would continue to gather evidence behind my back to blame you and slander you. You are my wife, Emoting suddenly said as he drove the car into a corner. He then looked at Tongning and explained, I want to take this opportunity to announce our relationship. I want to tell everyone that you are my wife and the woman I cherish the most. Rather than that, I might as well wait for him to use his ultimate move first. Wait for him to reveal his trump card, and when he's completely defeated, I'll take the opportunity to announce it. So, you deliberately misled Huarong's people, right? Also, previously at the airport, you said we were going to take the normal exit so you could tell others where we were. Tongning finally understood everything that Emoting had done. Huarong's people were actually able to keep their composure. They definitely didn't just release a simple photo. One look, and you could tell that Editor Lin was ambitious. Editor Lin wasn't hard to deal with, but Emoting wanted an opportunity to help him and Tongning. Will you blame me? Blame you for what? Tongning's eyes suddenly turned red. Blame you for putting in so much effort to scheme? Or blame you for scheming because you wanted to protect me and wanted others to acknowledge me? Just like how I dealt with Han Yufan and Emo Euro in front of you. I hope the Emoting I see is the real Emoting. I love you, so I'm willing to stand by your side. We still have to spend the rest of our lives together. Emoting stretched out his arms and pulled Tongning into his embrace. He then couldn't help but sigh. God has truly treated me well because he gave you to me. Trust me, I will only give you the best. Tongning had always believed in him, and she planned to continue believing in him. So, she said confidently, let's announce it. Let's just use the incident with Huarong Studio as an excuse. After all, they just want to destroy me with more scandals. I never thought Tongning would be so capable. She even played with the daughter of a famous director like Coke. After a busy day, Huarong's people returned to the hotel they were staying at. Editor Lin looked at the photo and said to his subordinates, "What do you mean by the daughter of a famous director? We must say she is Tongning's illegitimate daughter." But this time, Emoting was also there. It was obviously for work. Editor Lin glanced at his stupid subordinate and waved him over. Say that Tongning has an illegitimate daughter in France, then release a photo of them playing together and do an analysis of their faces. Do you think the public will notice if this is true or not? Isn't this a little too vicious? Hairue's people have already made it impossible for us to go. If we don't hurry up and turn the situation around, you can forget about ever appearing in Beijing again, Editor Lin said straightforwardly. Hurry up and write me a report. Tomorrow, Team 2 will be on standby. As long as Tongning is overseas, I refuse to believe she can withstand the loneliness. But editor, don't forget, Emoting is by her side. She won't be able to do anything. That may not be true. Do you think a fickle woman like her can change her nature? But Emoting is already the best in the world. How can she not be satisfied? How thirsty is this woman? Stop talking nonsense. Tomorrow, Team 2 will be on standby, Editor Lin instructed. Because of Emoting's presence, the chances of them getting anything substantial were very low. But that didn't mean they had to be lucky. In reality, they had no idea that Emoting had always been there. And the three men he was referring to were actually Emoting. Of course, this was all planned by President Emo. It was better than letting Huarong capture all sorts of photos and then come back later to find evidence. At least, they were already prepared. All they had to do was wait for Huarong to fall into their trap. That night in Beijing, a bone-piercing cold wind blew past. After dinner, Fang Yu looked at Hua Jingjing. His eyes seemed to say, "Didn't you say you'd leave at night? I don't think the reporters will notice you at this time. Put on a disguise. I'll take you home." Hua Jingjing immediately responded, "I don't have any clothes to wear. Did you forget? I came here in underwear. I asked your assistant to bring it to you. I just went downstairs to get it." "When?" Hua Jingjing asked awkwardly. "You and Yuer went to get it while you were taking an afternoon nap. Hurry and change. Must you chase me away?" Hua Jingjing didn't really want to return to her apartment. It was cold, lonely, and she liked to let her imagination run wild. "You have a guest room. Even if you can't, I can sleep on the sofa. When you're not around, I can keep you air company. Plus, if I want to find you, I don't need to make a phone call." Perhaps she was afraid Fang Yu would misunderstand her, so Hua Jingjing added, "This apartment has too many bad memories. Plus, Jinmani sent people to block my door, so it's no longer a secret. I'll sell it and buy it next door. I have no family or ties. It doesn't really matter where I live. Let's go. Let's go collect our things." This was actually what Fang Yu wanted to say. Chapter 287. That night in France, Tongning was sitting under the lights flipping through a magazine. After Moting finished his work, he suddenly walked over to her side and said, "The Japanese designer that originally wanted to custom make your jewelry has to return to China because his wife is in the hospital waiting to give birth. So, we will be taking your measurements tonight." "Custom-made jewelry?" Tongning put down the magazine and looked at him suspiciously. I've never heard you mention this before. I am your manager, so I am naturally in charge of arranging these things. Immerse gently smiled as he sat down beside her. Immerse's lips gently curved upwards as he sat down beside her. I know you don't like to wear jewelry and diamonds, but since you're already married to me, there are some occasions where you can't avoid using them. Look at other models. They can't wait to live in luxury jewelry stores. But what about you? I am doing this to help you save money. Tongning had never liked things like jewelry, nor did she like to be flashy. She preferred to keep things simple. There are still 3 hours before the designer returns to China. I have a meeting to attend later. Drive to the hotel and look for him. His entire team will be there. They just need to take a measurement. Tongning received the car keys from Immerse's hands. She understood why he was doing this. So, did you want to order jewelry for me? Or did you want to leave some material for Huarong? Of course, I wanted to order jewelry for you. I've looked through the jewelry boxes at home a few times and couldn't find anything you like to wear. Immerse picked up his laptop and showed Tongning her schedule. This was decided a long time ago. You were the one that didn't notice. Okay, I'll go. Tongning thought about it. Apart from work and requests from business partners, she really didn't like to wear expensive baggage. But, as a model, she was a bit too plain. Be careful. If anything happens, give me a call. I'll pick you up later. Tongning smiled as she packed up a little and grabbed her handbag and keys before leaving the hotel. Of course, to create the appropriate effect, Tongning even wore sunglasses. It seemed she was afraid of being discovered. The couple's acting was getting more and more realistic. The people from Huarong waited outside the hotel for an entire day. From the cigarette butts by their feet, it was obvious how anxious they were. Especially at night, it was extremely cold. The 3 men wrapped themselves tightly in their clothes and hid their heads deeper into their collars. Motherfucker, Tongning is the hardest person to follow. Someone couldn't help but complain. His companion patted him on the shoulder and smiled helplessly. Who asked her to be so shrewd? With this woman scheming, I would be surprised if she didn't get to where she is now. I really don't know when these bitter days will end. My luck has come. The 3 of them looked over to where Immerse had parked his car, only to see Tongning enter the car park on her own. After confirming there was no one around, she boarded her car and left. The 3 of them exchanged glances with each other. Then, they checked the cameras again and quickly followed. This woman is taking a detour the whole time. She's shopping and buying things. Is she leading us in circles? Taking photos is just a waste of memory. Let's follow him for a while longer. Tongning guessed the people at Huarong had run out of patience. So, she boarded her car and sped towards the hotel address Immerse gave her. After arriving at the hotel, Tongning parked her car in the garage. After stepping out of the car, she was in no rush to leave. 5 minutes later, a tall and skinny young man stepped out of the elevator and received Tongning. The 2 of them then stepped into the elevator one after the other. The people at Huarong continued to take photos furiously. The 3 of them worked together and took many photos of Tongning and the man. They excitedly slapped their thighs. Editor Lin is right. This woman can't handle loneliness. Perhaps. Immerse is getting old. So, he can't satisfy her? Regardless, our mission has been successfully completed. The 3 of them were excited for quite some time before they sent all the photos to Editor Lin. Editor, you better prepare your reward as soon as possible. Lin Chong looked at the photos. His eyes were like a wolf's, fierce and piercing. Tongning, let's see where you can run to this time. I won't forget about your benefits. After Tongning comes out, you guys should immediately return to the hotel. We already have enough evidence to make a big move. There's no need to risk following her any further, Lin Chong instructed. Finally, long live liberation. Let's go back and watch a good show. The 3 of them were extremely excited. However, they did not notice that behind them, Immerse was also parked in a hidden corner in another car. All they saw was him looking at the 3 paparazzi coldly. His ink-black eyes contained a slight sense of mockery, but it was mostly filled with indifference. Immerse was, of course, worried about Tongning driving on her own, especially since she was being followed by the paparazzi. So, even if something really happened, He had to suppress it. So, when Tongning gave him a phone call, he asked, "Have you taken your measurements?" "Yes, I'll wait for you at the hotel." "No need. I'm already here." "You can come down," Emoting replied. Tongning looked at the time. She had only been up for 20 minutes. "Were you following behind me?" "No, I was following behind you," Emoting explained as he described the state of the people behind him. They should be waiting for the celebration party to start. From the looks of it, they seemed to be in a good mood. After speaking, Emoting started the car and left the parking lot. He then headed straight for the hotel entrance to pick up Tongning. As for the 3 unlucky people in the parking lot, he was going to let them wait. It would be best if they thought Tongning had stayed up there all night. "Do you feel uncomfortable doing this?" Tongning looked straight ahead and remained silent for a few seconds. She then replied, "Why would I feel uncomfortable? I didn't hurt anyone in the first place. I've always played my part and haven't done anything out of line. I don't understand why Lin Chong won't let me off the hook. This reporter is different from other paparazzi. He's doing this for money, but it's not all for money. From the start, it was indeed a coincidence that he bumped into you. Afterwards, he may have misunderstood you. Plus, Lu Che has already found information on him. He's been married 3 times and divorced 3 times, Emoting explained. Due to his failed marriage, he developed a strong hatred towards women. So, he decided to change his career from a radio host to a paparazzi. He used his so-called sense of justice to pry into other people's private affairs. Tongning smiled calmly as her anger subsided. In fact, she found it funny. It's quite a strange feeling to be hated by a stranger. But he has so many anti-fans. What does he think he is? One day, the truth will come to light and he will regret it. I know. You will make me pay for everything I've suffered. Chapter 288. Emoting stretched out his hand and lovingly stroked Tongning's hair. Of course, in actual fact, the thing that Emoting admired the most about Tongning was her clear-cut personality. If she was right, she was right. If she was wrong, she was wrong. She had a clear attitude and was never sloppy. She was always clean and efficient. So, she was suited for the entertainment industry. She was suited for the ups and downs of the industry with him. So, what he wanted to do the most was to bring her glory. After the couple returned to the hotel, Tongning sat beside Emoting and looked through some documents with him. However, Emoting turned his head and looked at Tongning's slightly closed eyes. He let out a gentle laugh and said, "You have an interview with Claudine tomorrow. Hurry and get some rest." "I want to hug you to sleep," Tongning replied in a raspy voice. Emoting looked at the documents in front of him before leading Tongning to sit on the bed. He then patted his chest. "Come here." Tongning lifted the blankets and lay down beside Emoting as she wrapped her arms around his waist. Emoting held on to Tongning with one hand and held on to the documents in the other. He suddenly realized he couldn't flip to the next page. Tongning was tightly hugging onto his arm like she was doing it on purpose. Emoting suddenly understood her intention. He put down the documents, picked up his phone, and gave Lu Che a phone call. "President, Director Zhang has already contacted me a few times. He wants to invest in Stupid under the name of Bayou Film and Television. But I'm guessing this is his son Jay King's idea. The funds for Stupid are already in place. If they contact you again, just reject them," Emoting said in a low voice. "But he is our shareholder. Plus, Director Zhang has already transferred 3.2% of Hai Rui's shares to his son, Jay King. I'm sure Jay King wants to interfere with Hai Rui's operations. So, I can't rule out the possibility that he will make more moves in the future. Perhaps, my recent actions have made them think I've been blinded by lust? Has an opportunity arrived? President, I'm just reporting to you. Something like this isn't enough for you to worry about," Lu Che immediately replied. "Keep a close eye on them." After speaking, Emoting hung up the phone and gently placed it on the bedside table. Emoting hugged Tongning and lay down. In the dark, Emoting's eyes flickered. There were always greedy people who coveted Hai Rui's management rights. Did he think he would be Tongning's manager? Couldn't he manage Hai Rui? Was he questioning his ability? 10 p.m. in France was 8 a.m. in Beijing. This was the first night that Hua Jingjing moved into Fang Yu's home. Of course, nothing happened. She slept in the guest room. Hua Jingjing woke up early. It didn't take long before she heard Fang Yu open the door. Hua Jingjing hurriedly got out of bed and opened the door. Just in time to see Fang Yu walking into the kitchen in his boxers. Fang Yu froze for a moment. He never expected Hua Jingjing to wake up so early. He quickly returned to the bedroom and put on a robe before reappearing in front of Hua Jingjing. Why are you up so early? I have an interview today. I will probably go abroad in 2 days. Plus, it's almost January. For the fashion week in March, I might be staying abroad for a long time. Fang Yu nodded his head, but his face remained expressionless. He simply replied, I can't leave the country. Hairue is quite busy. I'm not asking you to accompany Tongning like President Imo. Hua Jingjing paused for a moment before she continued. If I return after 3 months, will you become someone else's boyfriend again? Or perhaps a female artist like Zhen Mani that needs you to support her? It turned out it was a woman's sense of danger that was causing trouble. Fang Yu pulled out some milk and breakfast ingredients from the fridge. As he closed the fridge door, he said, I only have 2 girlfriends. The older one is currently standing in front of my kitchen, and the younger one is sleeping in my nursery. Hua Jingjing felt a little silly, so she gently approached Fang Yu from behind and wrapped her arms around him. You don't seem to be very passionate towards me. Fang Yu did not say a word. He simply laughed as he freed himself from Hua Jingjing's embrace and returned to the bedroom. As he reappeared, he was holding a household register in his hand and handing it to Hua Jingjing. After she passed away, Xiao Yu's incident happened. It's been almost 7 years since I've been in this industry. Apart from Auntie, you are the only woman that has ever entered my home. So, why are you giving me this? Do you want to get married? Tell me. You are the only person that has made me feel this way. Hua Jingjing froze. They had just become a couple 2 nights ago. Did he just propose to her today? I'm not asking you to tell me right now. I just want you to know my attitude. The two had experienced so much and carried so much on their shoulders. To be able to survive and have a future was already a blessing from God. Hua Jingjing hugged the household register as her eyes turned red. Tongning is right. God always leaves the best for last. He wants me to understand that all the suffering I've endured was worth it. Fang Yu leaned over and placed a kiss on Hua Jingjing's forehead. He then said to her, Go get changed. While you're at it, take you air to freshen up. On the surface, Fang Yu appeared to be a relaxed person. At times, he even gave off a frivolous vibe. But Hua Jingjing knew, on the inside, he suffered more than most people. It didn't matter. She was going to give him a new life. 9 in France. Inside a specially decorated studio, Tongning and Mo Ting met with the world's top master, Claude N. He was an old French designer with a full beard. As soon as he saw Tongning, he couldn't help but gasp in admiration at her legs. These are the most beautiful legs I've ever seen. Claude N. welcomes you to join us. Sometimes, it was hard to understand what these masters were aiming for. Of course, it was normal for Tongning to be chosen because of her legs. But there were also people who were chosen because of their round buttocks, their fingers, their feet, and there were even people who were chosen because of a mole. I'm very satisfied. Let's talk about signing a contract. The master praised Tongning. However, I have a condition. You need to stay in France and become a model for my agency. I need a pair of legs like this. I like legs like this. After hearing the man's request, Tongning furrowed her brows. Of course, your manager can also join us. Tongning looked around Claude N.'s studio carefully. She noticed on his desk were all sorts of photos of models' legs. To be exact, he had an obsession with legs. Claude N. I think I've already made my stance clear over the phone. She will only accept this one shoot. Mo Ting emphasized his stance in a calm manner. But, in reality, he did not reveal his identity to the woman either. Claude N. turned around and looked at the two unhappily. Tongning is the first Asian model I've ever invited. Don't tell me you guys don't want such a good opportunity. You should know that the people I've invited have always attracted a lot of attention and sensation. Doesn't Tongning need it right now? She won't sell her body. If she wants to sell something, She will only sell it to me, Mo Ting replied straightforwardly. Chapter 289. Claude. In continued to measure the measurements on the workbench as he gestured towards the door with his chin. Since that's the case, I won't be seeing you out. He was, after all, a master with an eccentric temperament. However, Tongning felt her previous evaluation of Claude In was a little too polite. She was going to re-evaluate Claude In. He was an out-and-out fetishist. Claude In thought Mo Ting would lower his stance and show an expression of wanting to negotiate. But Mo Ting had no intention of doing that. Protecting Tongning, he turned around to leave. However, at this time, Kuan Yi appeared in front of Claude In's studio with a model from Star King. As the two parties faced each other, Kuan Yi couldn't help but laugh. Could it be our always successful President Mo has a moment where he loses? Mo Ting looked at Kuan Yi calmly. He didn't seem to care about him at all. Do you want me to put in a few good words for Tongning to Claude In? To be honest, I've actually become quite familiar with him over the past 2 days, Kuan Yi said casually as he brushed the raindrops off his body. It's raining in Paris. It's so cold. No one knew better than Mo Ting what Kuan Yi had done over the past 2 days. Don't forget, Liu Che had already arrived in France the day before. You should first beat me at the poker table before we talk, Mo Ting chuckled. He wrapped his arm around Tongning's shoulder and prepared to leave. However, Kuan Yi once again spoke up and held them back. Does this count as Hai Rui losing to Star King? After all, Tongning didn't manage to secure Claude In's high-end film. In reality, Tongning felt this wasn't Mo Ting's usual style. Just a moment ago, Claude In simply made a request, but Mo Ting had no intention of discussing it with him. Instead, he directly rejected Claude In by saying she would only sell herself to him. It seemed reasonable, but it wasn't something Mo Ting had to do. He would never do something he wasn't confident in. This is probably what Star King is after. If you beat me and get Claude In, would that be the ultimate glory? Mo Ting's lips suddenly curved upwards. Tongning glanced at him and felt he was about to make a big move. As expected, Mo Ting said calmly, actually Claude In is just a backup. I can't find a reason to reject him. Kuan Yi let out a laugh. He thought Mo Ting was simply trying to save his face. However, Mo Ting pulled out his phone and opened up an email invitation. Fearless was the overall winner of the last international design competition. Claude North came in 5th place, and coincidentally, Fearless is Claude In's ex-wife. Most importantly, she is a righteous person and won't stare at my Tongning's legs. You like Claude In? I'll leave it to you then. After speaking, Mo Ting led Tongning out of Claude In's office, leaving behind Kuan Yi with a pale expression. Seeing Kuan Yi's pale face, Tongning couldn't help but ask Mo Ting, what's going on? How can you do so many things behind my back? You were never separated from me. You don't need to go out to talk about invitations. You can do it with your computer and phone. Then what's with Foles? Translator, Uni-editor, Mo Ting drove as he smiled at the curious Tongning. The passenger list that Fong Yu received also included Kuan Yi. So, I asked Liu Che to fly to Paris and keep an eye on him. I found out that Kuan Yi had approached Claude in private. When I met with Director Koch at the manor, I told him you were also a model. But I never expected he would recommend you to Foles. I only received the phone call last night. But I told the other party that I already had a preliminary agreement with Claude In, but the other party was still willing to wait. So, if Claude In didn't go overboard, perhaps you would have asked me to work with him. But that doesn't mean we have no other options. Mo Ting nodded. There's also one more thing. Kuan Yi? It seemed the slap from earlier had hit Kuan Yi in the heart. Right now, not only will Kuan Yi be angered to death, Claude In will also be angered to death. As soon as he stared at your legs, I decided to give up on Claude In, Mo Ting said coldly. After he looked at you 10 times, I was so tempted to gouge his eyes out. Manager Mo, you are truly amazing. Tongning couldn't help but sigh. Mo Ting did not say anything. In reality, Luck also played a part in this matter. But in this industry, a person without luck would never become famous, no matter how much support they had. Let's go meet with fools right now. Tongning never imagined that her trip to France would have such a twist, but everything felt a little surreal. Perhaps it was because Imo Ting had arranged everything on his own. Tongning felt like Imo Ting had done too much behind the scenes, making her feel a little uneasy. Seeing Tongning suddenly fall silent, Imo Ting asked, "What are you thinking about? I thought I could keep up with your thoughts. But now, I realize I'm actually quite far from it. If you want to become a VIP at Fools, you need to be more professional. That's what you need to do," Imo Ting explained seriously. "Over the past 2 days, a lot has happened. I didn't mean to hide it from you. It's just that time was tight, and I didn't want to make you feel too emotional. The higher you stand, the more enemies you will face. There are a lot of things you can't control and need to learn to let go." Tongning closed her eyes. Her emotions were a little complicated. It wasn't that she didn't think she was smart enough. She simply felt that she had such a powerful husband. What would she do without him in the future? "You've spoiled me so much that I can't think on my own." Tongning leaned her head on Imo Ting's shoulder as the two headed to meet with Foles. The French woman who had only started her career as a designer after her divorce was extremely friendly as soon as she saw Tongning. She even took the initiative to give her a hug. "Welcome. I like the story of Stupid. Coke shared it with me. I hope your husband doesn't mind." Tongning looked at Imo Ting questioningly as Imo Ting lowered his head and smiled helplessly. "Don't worry, he only mentioned a small part and asked me to help him design a costume." Of course, Imo Ting was aware that this involved breaching the contract and leaking trade secrets. But he had no intention of using a world-class designer's design. That would cost too much. "So, I have a bold suggestion. I want to use your wife's image to design the costume of the actress who has a one-night stand with the athlete. Then, we can film a big film and achieve a win-win situation. This way, the film will be able to enter the European and American market, and my costume will be recognized by Asians. What do you think, President Imo?" Imo Ting smiled charmingly. "It's a good thing Foles isn't in the entertainment industry. Otherwise, I would have gained another strong competitor." President Imo sure knows how to talk. Just like that, Tongning and Mo Ting's work began to have a real connection. After a pleasant lunch, the two returned to the hotel. Tongning heard about the script for Stupid from Imo Ting and felt it was exceptionally interesting. It's rare to see such an outstanding script in China. "I wonder, which screenwriter wrote it?" "You don't know," Imo Ting replied. Tongning had a vague guess, but she did not ask further. Chapter 290. As it involved a collaboration with Stupid, Full's costume had to be custom-made for Tongning. The actual filming would take at least half a month later. While Tongning was being measured, Imo Ting and Fools were sitting to one side drinking coffee. Fools turned her head and looked at Tongning. She then asked Imo Ting curiously, "Have you decided on an actress?" "I'm still in the process of contacting her," Imo Ting replied. "Although the actress won't make many appearances, her scenes are still important." "Why don't you consider her?" Fools asked as she pointed to Tongning with her chin. "Don't you plan to let her develop in the film and television industry? This is a good opportunity." Imo Ting tilted his head and looked at Tongning without saying a word. He simply smiled meaningfully at Fools. The autumn/winter fashion week is about to start. With Tongning's professionalism and long legs, it's only a matter of time before she becomes famous. I feel, once she reaches this level, she will be interested in doing something else. The feeling of appearing on the runway and on television is completely different. She likes to take things one step at a time. After taking her measurements, Tongning returned to Imo Ting's side and looked at the two. "What were you talking about? How did you know we were talking about you?" Imo Ting tilted his head and asked with interest. "Because your gaze has never left me," Tongning replied. "My gaze has always been on you." After speaking, Imo Ting stood up and shook Ful's hand before leaving with Tongning. However, before they left, Ful's leaned against the door and crossed her arms as she reminded Imo Ting. "You should really consider it." Ting replied with a smile before he left with Tongning. I've booked a flight back to China tonight. Tomorrow, I will be attending the press conference for a super IP. Your fashion week is also about to start, so I need to make some time early. What did Full say you were considering? Tongning hadn't forgotten the mysterious conversation they had just had. We'll talk about it later. Ting tilted his head and looked at Tongning with a passionate gaze. We still have some time in the afternoon. Let's go shopping in Paris. We haven't gone shopping in a long time. Is that okay? Is it okay for us to go out hand in hand? I'll satisfy you. Ting tapped the tip of Tongning's nose as he smiled dotingly. Tongning was too easily satisfied. Even a small thing like this could make her happy for a long time. After returning to the hotel, Lu Che had completed his mission and returned to Ting's side. However, when he saw Ting, his expression was unusually serious. Tongning realized he probably had business to talk to Ting about, so she freed herself from Ting's grip and said, "You deal with work first. I can walk around on my own." "Madam, Long Jia wants me to bring something back." "But I don't know how to tell if it's real or fake." Lu Che pulled out a list from his pocket. Speaking of which, Long Jia had given her a phone call before leaving the country. So, she received the list from Lu Che and said, "Leave it to me, I'll go buy it." Ting held onto Tongning's hands and looked at her apologetically. "I promised I would accompany you. I know France better than you. I won't get lost. Plus, I know that as long as it's something that can be pushed aside, you won't hesitate. So, hurry up and get back to work. Then stay nearby. Don't go too far." "Okay." Tongning nodded. Ting was still worried, so he asked the hotel to send 2 bodyguards to follow behind Tongning. In order not to leave Ting's line of sight, Tongning walked around the hotel and eventually found a cafe to sit down. If she knew that this afternoon in France would be the most leisurely time in her life, would she cherish it even more? After sitting in the cafe for a while, Tongning decided to return to the hotel. But, just as she stood up, she noticed someone had recognized her and was following her. Tongning did not stop as she directly returned to the hotel. As she pushed open the door, she noticed Ting and Quan Yi were busy, so she decided to quietly watch a movie. In reality, the person following Tongning wasn't a normal passerby. He was someone that Quan Yi had sent to wait outside the hotel. After seeing the bodyguards following Tongning out, he carefully avoided them. He did not disturb Tongning as he followed her around to take photos. Afterwards, he sent Tongning's photos to Quan Yi and told him to go to the same places. He pretended to be the 2 of them drinking coffee and walking around the streets. One was walking in front, and the other was walking behind. They were simply in different frames, but it was enough to leave the imagination of the public. Did Ting not want to take him along? Yet, he insisted on joining them. That night, Tongning and the other 2 returned to Beijing. However, at the airport, they still ran into the persistent Quan Yi. To be exact, he did this on purpose. "President what a coincidence. I never thought we would be fated to meet. Is it a coincidence?" Ting laughed. "Whether it's a coincidence or not, I'm sure you know. But the person who followed him closely wanted to see what tricks he had up his sleeves. President, let's go. Time to board the plane." Lu Che had been following this playboy for an entire day. He had no idea what this spoilt brat was doing. Above all, he couldn't figure out who had given him such a strange view of the world. So, he did not have a good impression of this spoilt brat. For a person that made destroying others his mission, would his future be interesting? Quan Yi shrugged his shoulders and followed behind Lu Che to board the plane. Of course, whether Quan Yi knew Ting's flight number depended on whether Ting wanted him to know. Everyone was seated in first class, but Ting and Tongning completely ignored Quan Yi. So, before the plane took off, Quan Yi posted the message he had prepared on his social media page. A short date? The accompanying photo was of a woman's back, followed by 2 empty coffee cups and finally, his own back. As soon as the message was posted, Quan Yi's social media page exploded. At first, no one recognized Tongning. But it wasn't until Tongning's flight landed that the clothes she was wearing were exactly the same as the woman in Quan Yi's photo. No way. Tongning, who was with Ting, was actually going on a date with Quan Yi? Quick, look at this. This is a photo of a fan welcoming Tongning. Isn't this the same person as the photo posted by the heir of Star King? Isn't it? Immediately, someone pulled out the photo and compared it to the photo. They immediately screamed. What kind of plot twist is this? How did Tongning get involved with that spoilt brat? Are they trying to break up the couple? No way. Didn't President Mo follow them the entire time? I think it's because they are close in age, so they have a common language. Does Tongning not reject anyone? Online, news of Tongning and Quan Ye's trip spread like wildfire. If not for the person directly involved, even Hua Jingjing would have thought Tongning had gone drinking coffee with the spoilt brat. So, she immediately gave Feng Yu a phone call. Have you seen Tongning's message? What's going on? I'm working on PR. Feng Yu quickly replied. Chapter 291. The situation at the airport wasn't looking good either. Tongning currently had a large group of fans, and Quan Ye's photo had already been released before he boarded the plane. After 11 hours of build-up, Beijing Airport was a difficult place for Tongning to walk. Not to mention, Ting and Quan Yi were walking out of the terminal together. But Ting was prepared as he escorted Tongning through the airport. Before anyone could react, he had already led Tongning to the exit of the terminal. The people from Hairue immediately drove up and Ting escorted Tongning into the car. Before they were surrounded by the cameras, they turned around and left the airport. But Quan Yi was blocked at the exit. As the reporters chased after him, Quan Yi chewed on his gum in a frivolous manner, completely ignoring them. President Quan, what is your relationship with Tongning? Is it convenient for you to reveal it? President Quan, could it be that you and Tongning are on a date? President Quan, please say a few words. President Quan, seeing some of the reporters fall over from trying to surround him, Quan Yi finally stopped in his tracks. He removed his sunglasses and replied, "Whatever you see is the truth. I have nothing to say." The reporters were stunned. Was Quan Yi silently admitting to the reporters' questions? Was he admitting to his relationship with Tongning? But how is that possible? Tongning had Ting by her side, and everyone knew about the relationship between Hairue and Star King. Although they weren't as incompatible as fire and water, they definitely weren't on good terms. Quan Yi looked at the reporters' reactions and was satisfied. He then let out a laugh as he put his sunglasses back on. Under the protection of airport security, he quickly left Beijing Airport, leaving behind a group of reporters who looked at each other in confusion. But can Quan Ye's words be trusted? Since when does a spoilt brat like Quan Ye's words hold any weight? Exactly, President Mo hasn't said anything yet. We will believe whatever Ting says. But the problem is, we can't see President Mo at all. Tongning never expected that, after a few days overseas, she would witness the grand event from a few days ago. As soon as she turned on her phone, she was bombarded with phone calls from Long Jia and Hua Jingjing. They were all asking about Quan Yi and what kind of curse she had fallen under. Long Jia even asked if she had let Ting down. Of course, Tongning knew he was joking. But because the phone was on speakerphone, Ting heard Long Jia's question. He immediately snatched the phone out of Tongning's hand and said, "Even if it's a joke, you need to be moderate." Long Jia was shocked. She suddenly realized her words had made Tongning feel uncomfortable, so she quickly explained, "That's not what I meant. Forget it." She then looked at Ting and asked, "Did you know about this beforehand?" Ting looked at Tongning seriously with a hint of fierceness. "Did you think I knew about this beforehand?" "I don't know." Although she knew asking a question like this at a time like this would undoubtedly make Ting uncomfortable, she had already promised that she wouldn't hide anything from him. "Tongning, I'm not a god. I can't predict everything. Over the past 2 days, I've been in a daze. My thoughts haven't been able to keep up with yours. That's why I asked," Tongning explained. "I won't be able to catch up to you in a short amount of time. But I can't just wait around like a fool. I thought, even if I didn't say it, we would still be of one mind. At least, when an outsider asks, I would be able to say the same thing as you and let them know that we are one. Immerse took a deep breath. The temporary depression in his heart suddenly dissipated as he hugged Tongning and explained, "If I had known Quan Yi would use this trick, I would have made it so that he would never be able to enter the entertainment industry and completely disappear. I didn't protect you well enough. Don't you think it's too early for you to say that?" Tongning suddenly laughed. "I refuse to believe that you can't come up with a solution. I refuse to believe that you sent bodyguards just to protect me. Plus, we have always been in the shadows." President Immerse smiled as he placed Tongning on his lap. He then gently stroked her hair with his slender fingers. "What should we do? In the past, I could tolerate people talking bad about you, but now, I can't tolerate a single word." "But, I've already gotten used to it," Tongning replied gently. "From now on, you need to tell me every single decision you make." "In that case, if I told you that I already knew Quan Yi would do this, would you really argue with me?" "A big date," Tongning nodded. "After all, we are two people. After being together for so long, we understand each other better. So, there are bound to be areas where we argue. But, after asking that question, I immediately regretted it. In the end, I was the one who felt bad." Immerse lowered his head and looked at Tongning's head. In reality, he was the one who felt the same way. But the Tongning that was like this made him feel more at ease. She was more like a real person. "The bodyguard that was following you had a pinhole camera on him. As soon as he realized someone was following you, he immediately gave me a phone call. But because the person didn't follow you for too long and didn't do anything extreme, the bodyguard didn't report it to me. Mrs. Immerse, I simply knew that Quan Yi had sent someone to follow you. Who would have thought? He was actually trying to fabricate evidence." "Did you record everything?" Tongning grasped onto the main point. "I'll have to confirm it when I get back. But the part where you were shopping alone is definitely complete," Immerse replied. This time, Tongning let out a laugh as her mood improved. "Should I use this opportunity to announce our relationship? For the sake of Quan Yi, I don't need to go so far." Immerse was waiting for Huarong to make their move. Whether they wanted to extort him or had other plans, Immerse hoped they wouldn't delay for too long. "In that case, you should use your skills and play with that jerk. What do you think? Didn't he know whose woman he was messing with?" Of course, before Tongning closed her eyes, she said one last thing. "I feel disgusted when my name is mentioned next to his." "Okay." Tongning did not hear the word, "okay." Even if she had heard it, she wouldn't have understood what it meant. Because, as soon as Immerse returned home, he instructed Feng Yu to release photos of him and Tongning that had never been seen by the public. And his tacit acceptance also made the couple very excited. The couple's names quickly appeared on the search rankings, completely suppressing the popularity of Quan Yi's photos. Not only this, Immerse also gave Feng Yu a phone call. "Keep our names at the top of the search rankings. That way, Tongning will feel better." Chapter 292. Feng Yu felt like he was about to break down. Immerse had asked him to release a photo of the two of them at Hai Rue's celebration dinner just to make Tongning feel better. Did he have to be such a slave to his wife? What do we do next? Use the company's name to warn Star King not to create trouble and tell Quan Yi to clarify the truth, Immerse said straightforwardly. But that spoiled brat won't compromise. Isn't he trying to blow things up this time? So, after the situation escalates, Hai Rue will hold a press conference and invite Tongning's rumored boyfriend to attend. Let's see what Tongning has done to him. Immerse said calmly, "There's no need to save face for Star King. Since the spoiled brat likes to play around so much, it's reasonable for him to embarrass Star King. I've long heard that Star King's shareholders have expressed a strong interest in the Quan family's management rights," Feng Yu continued. Hearing this, Immerse lowered his right hand and quickly hung up. The gaze in his eyes was deep and sharp. After all, Imperial Star wasn't the only one who was fighting for power. Recently, there were also people in Hai Rue that wanted to create big news. The internet was in an uproar because of Quan Ye's exposure of the photos. Naturally, there was a lot of fighting going on. However, this time, her fans were no longer fighting alone. Before leaving the country, Tongning had promised Emoting that she would treat her fans well from now on. So, she used Long Jie's account, logged onto social media, and appeared in the group chat. This time, our Tongning must have been slandered again. Why can't these people get used to seeing our Tongning do well? I'm jealous our Tongning and Emoting are together. But, if we go and fight, we'll really attract criticism. What did my Ning do wrong? She's always being slandered. This won't do. In a moment, I'll go down and count how many times my Xiao Ning has been slandered. We've really been beaten and bullied everywhere. We've really been slandered in all sorts of ways. We've been so angry that we've cried. As soon as Tongning saw this, she immediately used her identity as Long Jie and said, "Pass me some tissues." At first, the fans in the group did not notice. But, as soon as one of them saw Long Jie's profile picture, they finally realized what was going on. Slow down. Was that Tongning's assistant? Long Jie, hurry and tell us how Tongning is. Sigh, I don't think she would dare to say anything. I'm fine. Tongning replied straightforwardly. I'm fine, not she's fine. The fan group was suddenly in an uproar. In just a few seconds, the words "I'm fine" had completely disappeared. Am I seeing things? Did that person say I'm fine? Has Long Jie gone crazy? Tongning looked at the disbelieving replies that quickly appeared on the screen. She typed another line of words. If it's time to do it, then do it. Don't be afraid. I'm not familiar with President Quan of Star King, so don't let yourselves be wronged. If you can't win, tell me. I'll help. Are you Tongning? Tongning was stunned for a moment before she took a selfie and sent it to the group. I am. With the words "I am you" in the photo, the fans went all out and sent Tongning flying. At the same time, the other fans that were offline received all sorts of notifications. Not long after, the number of people in the group increased by a few times. Luckily, Long Jie was the admin, so Tongning couldn't chat with everyone. All she could do was place an announcement at the top. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. This was Tongning's usual way of doing things. Loyal fans all knew this was the type of person Tongning was. So, with Tongning's support, the fans finally felt confident. They believed in Tongning because they felt that brains were a good thing, but not everyone had it. Because anyone with a normal IQ would understand this. Not to mention, Emoting was Tongning's manager and was bound by Emoting in every way. Even if Emoting wasn't Tongning's manager, anyone with eyes wouldn't give up on Emoting for the sake of Quan Yi. As for Tongning, no matter how you looked at her, it was impossible to tell that she was blind. So, the fans' trust in Tongning was 100%. With the addition of Tongning's sudden appearance in the fan group, it didn't take long for the rope to be twisted, and there was no longer a need to hold back. It turned out, being able to get close to a group of people that liked you could give you a sense of existence and satisfaction. Tongning was cold, but that didn't mean she was cold-blooded. In the past, she didn't care about her fans because she wasn't capable enough. She had to keep moving forward. If she had no status, how could she protect her fans? But now, she had the ability and the confidence. So, it was now her turn to protect her fans. Not long after, Beijing was plunged into darkness. Emoting returned home from Hairue with a cold aura. Seeing Tongning sitting on the sofa looking at her fans' messages, he sat down beside her and pulled her into his embrace. Now, I can see your smile every time I go home. Ning, you've changed. Tongning put down her phone and leaned into Emoting's embrace. Have I changed for the better or for the worse? Haven't you noticed? In the beginning, your heart was hard. Even when you trusted me, it was forced because you knew it was good for you. But, as time passed, you softened. But, for a period of time, you didn't want to believe in this world. But now, you've opened up. You want to interact with the outside world, you want to share some good things, and you're even willing to argue with me. I feel that Tongning now has a real body of flesh and blood. After hearing this, Tongning was a little surprised. She never expected. She had always thought she hadn't changed much. But now that she thought about it, she was indeed like Emoting said. That's because you've treated me well and made me willing to believe that there are people in this world that are willing to give up without any regrets. I first believed in you before I was willing to believe in this world again, Tongning said with tears in her eyes. President Mo, as expected, only after being treated gently by someone can you understand love. Mo Ting reached out his hand to wipe away Tongning's tears and placed a kiss on her eyelashes. He then smiled. Okay, I'm going to go have a shower. Don't look at your phone for too long. It's not good for your eyes. Plus, why are you crying? Our life will continue to be this happy. So, even if Quan Yi slandered you, don't be afraid. Tongning nodded her head as she wiped away her tears. I've never been afraid. I have you. In that case, let's wait for a good show. This time, I'm going to make Star King cough up something good as an apology. After speaking, Mo Ting stood up, removed his jacket, and headed for the bedroom. A good show? President Mo didn't just want to punish Star King, right? Tongning thought to herself. After all, this black-bellied man had even released a photo of them and dominated the search rankings. Chapter 293. Before going to bed, Hua Jingjing gave her a phone call to ask about the truth and whether she had provoked the spoilt heir. Tongning held onto her phone and laughed. Who asked him to be the heir of Star King? He can do whatever he wants without caring about other people's feelings. In the end, it's all because of President Mo. Hua Jingjing was aware that Mo Ting had never given Quan Yi any face. So, this was simply his way of revenge. You don't need to be so clear between us. Let's meet up tomorrow. I'll go to your house. As soon as Hua Jingjing heard Tongning wanted to go to her house, she suddenly remembered she hadn't told Tongning that she had moved into Fang Yu's home. Previously, Mo Ting had picked up on the phone. So, now that Tongning actually brought it up, she didn't know where to start. I'm currently packing my luggage. My house is in a mess. The auditions for Fashion Week have already started. Okay, I'll keep in touch. After speaking, Tongning was about to hang up the phone. However, a man's voice could be heard on the other side of the phone. Have you packed your luggage? Fang Yu strode into the guest room and noticed Hua Jingjing's bed was in a mess. I remember your manager and assistant are both women, aren't they? Jingjing. Hua Jingjing glared at Fang Yu and pointed to the phone in her hand. Fang Yu understood, but he did not keep quiet. He knew Hua Jingjing only had one friend, Tongning. So, he grabbed the phone from Hua Jingjing's hand and said, Tongning is packing her luggage. She has an early flight tomorrow and needs to rest. Tongning recognized Fang Yu's voice and could roughly guess the relationship between the two. Previously, when she tried to matchmake them, the two of them refused to fall in love. But now that she had given up, the two of them were together on their own. When it came to love, it was hard to tell if it was good or bad. Are you at her house? She's already moved in, Fang Yu explained. In that case, you guys should get some rest. Tongning did not want to disturb them too much. She was simply happy for Hua Jingjing. But, Fang Yu's child? What else did she say? Hua Jingjing asked as she watched Fang Yu put down his phone. Fang Yu helped her close her luggage and turned around with a smile. She asked us to get some rest. Actually, I was just about to tell you that I spilled the lotion on the bed. Fang Yu put down Hua Jingjing's suitcase and noticed the puddle of water on the bed. He picked up Hua Jingjing's pillow and grabbed onto her wrist. Tonight, sleep in my room. Before we part, I'll be your pillow. Meanwhile, Tongning put down her phone. Seeing Mo Ting had not returned to the bedroom, she went to the study room and sat down beside him. Why aren't you asleep? Jingjing seems to be with Fang Yu. Tongning leaned on Mo Ting's shoulder as her gaze fell upon the documents in Mo Ting's hands. Isn't that what you've always hoped for? You have to trust your own eyes. In that case, you don't need to read it anymore. Don't you still need to attend the Super IP launch conference tomorrow? Tongning took the documents from Mo Ting's hands and held onto his hand as they returned to the bedroom. The next day, Mo Ting was getting changed in the walk-in closet when Lu Che gave him a phone call saying that Quan Yi was stirring up trouble again. He had posted an explicit poem on his social media page, expressing his admiration for the love between a man and a woman. Kuan Yi did not mention anyone, but it was obvious he was secretly snatching her away from Imo Ting. Imo Ting had posted the poem to the top of the news yesterday as a way to demonstrate his power. By doing this, Kuan Yi was obviously hinting to the public that he and Tongning had reached a certain level of intimacy. Imo Ting did not say a word as he put on his gray checkered suit and walked out of the walk-in closet. He then reminded Tongning, who was preparing breakfast, "You don't have work to do today. Don't leave the house. Are you trying to hide the poem from me?" Tongning asked quietly. "I'm just afraid you might get hurt in the chaos outside." Tongning handed a glass of milk to Imo Ting and nodded her head. "I'll stay at home and watch the show. Don't look at the comments online. I can already imagine what they will say. It doesn't make much of a difference whether you look at it or not." By doing this, Kuan Yi had forcefully removed her clothes. Even if the incident passed in the future, it would still leave a stain on his reputation. After all, she couldn't deny that in this world, there were a lot of people that didn't like to see the truth. If there was wind, they would follow. If there was pressure, they would tear. In reality, they were simply bored and didn't care how noble a person was. "I will handle it." So, without even eating breakfast, Imo Ting directly left the house. After boarding his car, he said to Lu Che, "Let's go to the press conference." Afterwards, he pulled out his phone and gave Father Quan a phone call. His voice was calm without a trace of anxiousness. "Either your son disappears, or Star King disappears." Father Quan had just found out about the despicable things his son had done and realized that he had offended Imo Ting. So, when he received this phone call, he was not surprised at all. Imo Ting was giving him a choice. "President Imo, if he says one more word, then both he and Star King will disappear." Father Quan was shocked. Just as he was about to explain, Imo Ting had already hung up the phone. He then pulled out his laptop, wrote up a statement in the car, and sent it to Fang Yu. Number 1, warn Star King. Number 2, release a statement. Number 3, hold a press conference at 3 p.m. to release the video evidence. Number 4, warn the public. This is a warning to the media. By the end of the day, we need to do a good job on the surface. As for what he needed to do, he would naturally do it in a moment. Fang Yu did not dare to delay as he instructed his legal department to contact Star King. If they didn't restrain Kuan Yi, Hai Rui was going to use force. Hai Rui has already made their move. They've already sent a lawyer's letter to Star King. I think this Kuan Yi is sick in the head. Does he think everyone is stupid? But he clearly knows he's going to be slandered, yet he still released a photo. Isn't that true love? From what I see, Hai Rui and Star King are simply fighting over a woman. How boring. Tongning has been scolded quite badly by passers-by that don't know the truth. If she comes out to explain, she will be scolded. If she doesn't, she will still be scolded. She's in quite a difficult position. I still insist on being paired with Tongning. President Imo isn't stupid. If Tongning really betrayed him, he would have kicked her out a long time ago. There's no way he would continue to protect her. President Imo, when are you going to step out and speak up for Tongning? The fans' question was also what Long Jie wanted to ask. Especially after Kuan Ye's actions worsened, Long Jie was so angry that she stormed over to Hyatt Regency. Tongning, I know what you want to say, but I trust Imo Ting, Tongning replied as she held onto the book in her hand. I know what he wants to do. I know better than anyone how much effort he put into this. After all, Imo Ting was well aware that he needed to personally speak this time. Chapter 294. Plus, I can't stand out and retaliate against Kuan Yi, because that would lower Imo Ting's status. Imo Ting and I are one. I can't treat myself like a jerk. But what else can I do? All I can do is trust him. Long Jie rubbed her chin in thought for a moment before she suddenly said excitedly to Tongning, I heard from Lu Che that a shareholder from Star King is trying to seize control of the company. The more Kuan Yi loses, the more dangerous the Quan family's position will be. Seizing control means the shares will be in turmoil. Long Jie, Go find out how Star King's shares are distributed. You also want Star King? Long Jia was a little surprised. But, although you have made a lot of money this quarter, it will still be difficult for you to acquire the shares. I'm just trying to find out. What are you thinking? Tongning looked at Long Jia and shook her head. Perhaps Ting will be useful when the time comes. But I don't think he needs us to find out anything. Don't underestimate me. Actually, a lot of important information is spread through small channels like ours. After speaking, Long Jia stood up from the sofa. After confirming that Tongning didn't need company, she quickly left Hyatt Regency. She was going to show off her skills. 10 a.m., the IP drama Evil Child, which was based on an online novel, held its press conference. This highly popular online novel was directed by a top domestic director and produced by the head of Hai Rui's film division. Featuring all the top actors and actresses in the country, it was known as the most anticipated drama of the year. Ting attended the press conference. Of course, he received as much attention as the main creator of the drama. As a few of the actors were from Hai Rui, they were inevitably asked questions about Tongning and Ting. Of course, this was happening backstage during the press conference that lasted for a few hours. Although the actors were asked questions that had nothing to do with the drama and themselves, they still replied politely, "We trust President Mo. Do you also trust our junior sister?" Ting left the press conference accompanied by a few of the people in charge. His footsteps were a little slow. It seemed he was deliberately waiting for the reporters to approach him. After being surrounded, his expression remained calm. Meanwhile, the people in charge behind him had to pretend to be serious as they waited. "President Mo, can you respond to the most popular questions of the moment? Which hot topic do you want to talk about?" Ting wasn't happy with the reporter's cowardice, so he subconsciously asked. The reporter observed Ting's expression. After confirming he had the desire to answer, he gathered his courage and asked, It's about the love triangle between Tongning and the heir of Star King." "I'm afraid I can't answer your question because it's not something I know how to play with," Ting replied to the camera. The reporter froze for a moment before realizing Ting's answer was a clarification. So, she pressed on. "In that case, what is Tongning's current condition? What was his reaction after knowing about this?" She was very calm. As for her reaction, she didn't have any special reaction because she wasn't familiar with him. Apart from last time at the awards ceremony where he strongly protected her, this was the first time he had spoken about her in public. As neither of them were the type to explain themselves, even though the public had already gone crazy with rumors about their relationship, Ting had never mentioned a single word about Tongning. Even though they were practically inseparable, at least at a public event like this, he had never mentioned Tongning. But today, Ting spoke up. She claimed that Tongning and Quan Yi weren't close. This was a way of clarifying the truth. He didn't say much, he simply said they weren't close. But he had already drawn a line between Tongning and Quan Yi. In other words, Tongning wasn't affected at all? If it has nothing to do with her, how much does she need to be affected? Ting asked. What about the meeting between Tongning and the heir of Star King that day in Paris? As for whether or not they met, Hai Rui will release the evidence this afternoon. After speaking, Ting signaled for his men to push the reporters away and leave the press conference. This was Ting's response as Tongning's manager to the public. What did they mean? What joke were they talking about? Did they have anything to do with my artist? My model was just an ignorant bystander. She had no idea that she had been met like this. My Tongning has nothing to do with Star King. Don't drag her down to the same level. Actually, we were just watching the show. Although his response wasn't very formal, it was Ting's attitude. Not long after, Ting's response hit the headlines. Although Ting spoke in a serious tone, what he was trying to say was, "Oh, so you were talking about my Tongning. Haha, just imagine how President Mo will deal with Tongning when he gets home. How will you thank me for taking the blame for your husband?" Since Ting denied that Tongning and Quan Yi are in a relationship, does that mean Quan Yi is lying? Our Quan Yi is a spoiled brat. Why would he vent his anger on a model that has been ridden by tens of thousands of people? Isn't he lowering himself? A model that has been ridden by tens of thousands of people is about to explode. She won't admit to cheating. Wait, President Imo mentioned that Hai Rue is going to release evidence. I wonder what it will be. I finally heard news about Tongning from President Imo. Oh God, it hasn't been easy. The two of them have really kept a low profile. Hayes, I've already gotten used to thinking about it. When will the two of them actually exchange sweets? Are the two of you lovers? Please don't be so ambiguous. Let's sit back and wait for Hai Rue's press conference. Online, the discussions were still filled with all sorts of voices. But after Imo Ting's response, the scolding towards Tongning lessened. Everyone knew that Imo Ting couldn't be bothered to waste his breath, let alone come up with a lie to deal with the public. That was even more out of his league. After the press conference, Imo Ting returned to Hai Rue and gave Feng Yu a phone call. Contact Star King and tell Quan Yi to attend this afternoon's press conference. If he doesn't come, he will suffer the consequences. President, what about Tongning? Do you want me to bring her here as well? No need, Imo Ting replied calmly. Tongning had said that she was disgusted by the sight of Quan Yi. So, for the sake of his wife's stomach, he couldn't allow Quan Yi to appear in front of her again. Okay, I understand. I will take full responsibility. Afterwards, Imo Ting hung up the phone and gave Lu Che a call. Help me register a personal social media account. I need to use it this afternoon, Imo Ting instructed. Lu Che froze for a moment. He had a feeling Imo Ting was planning something big. After all, Imo Ting had never used social media before. So, why else would he suddenly want to use it? It must be because he wanted to announce something, or perhaps make something public. I understand, President. I will prepare it before the press conference, Lu Che replied quickly. Chapter 295. In the office of the chairman of Imperial Star. When Father Quan saw the entertainment news, he sighed and turned off the television. He then called his secretary over the intercom. Call CO Quan in. Chairman Quan, I'm really sorry, President Quan isn't in the company. The female secretary replied while trembling with fear. Father Quan subconsciously clutched his chest. He was so upset that he couldn't breathe properly. Hurry and send someone to find him. Hai Rue is holding a press conference at 3 p.m. and they want Quan Yi to attend. We can't let this bastard damage Star King's interests. Yes, Chairman Quan. The secretary hung up and immediately contacted Quan Yi. However, the person in question didn't care about it at all. He still went out to sea, hugged models, and displayed his prodigal nature. At this moment, Quan Yi was out at sea drinking with a bunch of scoundrels. A few of the heirs raised their glasses of champagne and laughed at Quan Yi. The people from Hai Rue and your father are looking for you everywhere. Young master, you've caused such a big mess. When you get home, won't your father skin you alive? Plus, after the press release for Evil Child this morning, Imo Ting directly revealed that he doesn't know you well at all. Your photos and obscene poems are meaningless to him. Bro, you wouldn't be so heartless as to frame a model, would you? How cheap would that be? Quan Ye's face turned from red to white, then from white to green. Let's go back to Beijing. Don't tell me you're actually going to Hai Rue's press conference? Quan Yi smashed the glass of champagne on the table and pulled out his phone. He then opened up the photo he previously ordered someone to Photoshop. It was the photo of Huarong Studio secretly taking a photo of the couple kissing. He even added the words, could it be that the love of the past was all fake? The spoilt heir has released another photo. He has admitted that he is the man that was secretly photographed kissing Tongning. No way. If that was the case, then the spoilt heir and Tongning had long been together? Does CEO Imo know? What kind of drama is this? Now that you look at it, they really do look alike. Because of Hai Rue's PR, the original photo was basically deleted. The photos that were released were all photoshopped by Quan Yi. So, there was a high chance of being mistaken. Coupled with the fact that Quan Yi had personally admitted to it, it seemed Tongning and Quan Ye's relationship had been confirmed. Hai Rue was going to present evidence? He wanted to see what evidence Hai Rue had. After returning to Star King from the seaside, Kuan Yi pushed open the door and entered Father Kuan's office. Father Kuan looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, "I'm already old. When are you going to stop fooling around? You clearly know the difference between you and emoting. So why did you provoke Hai Rui? In your heart, I'm nothing, right?" All these years, other than causing trouble and picking up girls, what achievements have you made? Have you ever earned a penny for Imperial Star? Do you know how many people are eyeing your father's chair? I can't live for a few hundred years. I can't take care of you for a few lifetimes. Kuan Yi was also triggered by Father Kuan's words. His eyes grew wide as he said fiercely, "I will definitely cause trouble for Imo Ting." Seeing that his son was hopeless, Father Kuan raised his trembling arm and pointed at the office door. "Get out of here. By the way, you were the one who caused all of this. Hai Rui has asked you to attend the press conference at 3 p.m. If you don't want me to despise you as a CEO in name, you better not drag the entire Star King down with you." After hearing this, Kuan Yi left the office without looking back. So what if he was fooling around? Wasn't the world played by the rich? A mere model had already slept with multiple men. So what if he slandered her? So, he couldn't understand a model. For the sake of a single model, two agencies would fall out with each other. Why wouldn't he go? After all, in his father's eyes, he was just an incompetent jerk. The incident continued to grow, and its popularity continued to increase. Emoting wanted Tongning and Kuan Yi to draw a clear line, but Kuan Yi wouldn't allow it. So, as it neared 3 p.m., Fang Yu seriously prepared for the press conference. Of course, there was a new piece of evidence. After all, Kuan Yi had just done another disgusting thing. Below the stage, rows of reporters sat neatly in rows. Their faces were filled with excitement. Originally, they thought Emoting's words were the final word. Who would have thought? Kuan Yi would once again turn the tables. Now, one side claimed that they weren't familiar with each other, while the other presented evidence to prove that they were in love. As for the truth, it all depended on what evidence Hai Rui had to present. It's almost 3 p.m., but Kuan Yi hasn't arrived yet. That spoilt brat shouldn't be coming. Who knows? I heard someone even saw him out at sea with a beautiful woman this morning. Fang Yu watched as the reporters whispered amongst themselves without much expression on his face. Emoting's demand for today's press conference was not only to make Star King pay for their actions, he also wanted Hai Rui to criticize the media. Most importantly, in order to prepare for the press conference, he did not even send Hua Jingjing overseas. Instead, he allowed her to leave on her own. Thinking about it, he realized he was not a good boyfriend at all. At 3 p.m., the press conference began. However, Kuan Yi did not make a single move. It seemed he had no intention of attending. But Fang Yu didn't care. He simply felt that with Kuan Yi present, the press conference would be even more exciting. With a signal from Fang Yu, the entire venue fell silent. All that could be heard was the sound of camera shutters. Fang Yu scanned his eyes across everyone, bowed slightly, and began to speak. "Firstly, I would like to welcome my friends from the media. I am sure you are tired of seeing me. After all, every press conference that Hai Rui organizes, big or small, has to be attended by me. But what can I do about it? Who asked me to hold up Hai Rui's image?" The reporters burst into laughter. "Okay, let's get back to business. Let's talk about something serious." After speaking, Fang Yu turned around. Just as he was about to face the giant screen behind him, there was suddenly a commotion at the entrance of the venue. A moment later, Kuan Yi appeared in front of everyone wearing a black trench coat and blue glasses. "What? Are you starting without waiting for me?" Fang Yu smiled as he looked at Kuan Yi. "Welcome, President Kuan. What? Am I the only one that dares to come? Where's my precious Tongning? Where's your President Imo?" Kuan Yi smiled frivolously. Fang Yu suddenly put away his smile, stood up straight and said to Kuan Yi, "Our Tongning says the sight of you disgusts her. But our president has no reason to stop his work and waste his precious time for the sake of a spoilt heir." As Fang Yu said these words, his tone was obviously no longer polite. He had completely unleashed the aura that he had been hiding all this time. Of course, he blamed the fact that he couldn't send Hua Jingjing away on Kuan Ye's head. What did you say? A spoilt heir like Kuan Yi had never been humiliated like this before. He immediately lost his temper, but, compared to what you've done, what I've said to you is already polite enough. Even so, it doesn't change the fact that Tongning and I are together. Fang Yu couldn't be bothered to look at him. He directly controlled the screen behind him and began to display the evidence. Chapter 296. On the screen, the first photo that appeared was the photo that Kuan Yi had released that afternoon. However, this time, it was a larger version. From the photo, it was obvious that the figure looked similar to Kuan Yi. In fact, some of the features were similar. So, the media wanted to know what Fang Yu was trying to say. Was he trying to clarify the truth? Or was he trying to prove that Tongning and Kuan Yi were in a relationship? So, this is President Kuan. Isn't that right? What does President Fang mean by this? Fang Yu looked at the reporters and asked, "You can't see any flaws in this photo, right?" "I can't either." "In that case, let's take a look at the original photo." As soon as these words left his mouth, a picture that looked exactly the same as the previous one appeared on the screen behind Fang Yu. The two pictures were placed side by side. Everyone, please take a closer look at the comparison between the two photos. The one on the right is from President Kuan's social media page, while the one on the left is the earliest photo that was released. We contacted the netizens and obtained the original photo. Haven't you guys noticed that the two male leads have different heights? Fang Yu pointed out to the crowd. Although we can't see his face, our Tongning is 178 centimeters tall. In the original photo, there is a gap of 12 centimeters between them. But what about President Kuan? He is almost the same height as Tongning. Everyone, take a closer look at the background. Don't you think you can see traces of tampering? What can this prove? Kuan Yi sneered. Fang Yu was not in a rush as he continued to present evidence. On the screen behind him, a new photo appeared. This was information about the manor. This is a private manor. From what we know, you don't own any property here, right? I was brought in by Tongning. I'm sorry, but Tongning doesn't own any property either. Only the owner of the manor is allowed to bring people in. In a moment, the owner of the manor and the owner of the car in the photo will appear to explain everything. I won't waste any more time. But the conclusion is clear. President Kuan's photo has been tampered with. As soon as Fang Yu's words left his mouth, the reporters erupted into an uproar. Hai Rui's evidence was sufficient, and there were plenty of experienced people present. So, if they simply looked at Kuan Ye's photo, they wouldn't be able to find any flaws. But if they placed it next to the original photo, it would look too fake. Okay, this matter has been cleared up. There is no such thing as old love. In that case, do I and President Kuan know each other well? Fang Yu continued to lead the media as he once again pulled out the photos that Kuan Yi had previously posted. In President Kuan's photo, there are two coffee cups. In the same place, there is also our Tongning's back. The two are not in the same frame. Does this mean they are on a date? Don't tell me you have evidence for this? Kuan Ye's expression changed. When he was looking for Tongning, he had avoided her bodyguards. President Kuan, if I don't have any evidence, do you think everyone in Paris is blind? Fang Yu couldn't help but laugh. Hai Rui is so resourceful that you can bribe passers-by. I simply feel like I was blind to have fallen for that bitch Tongning. In the end, I was played by Hai Rui. I admit defeat. If I was your father, I would feel pain for his face right now, Fang Yu said coldly to Kuan Yi. After speaking to Kuan Yi in a cold tone, Fang Yu pressed on the remote control in his hand. This time, he turned on the camera. In the video, from the moment Tongning stepped out of the hotel, she had been on her own, including shopping, and drinking coffee. What date? This was complete nonsense. Kuan Yi suddenly panicked as his hands clenched into fists. Fang Yu could see through Kuan Ye's emotions. A spoiled heir like him simply wanted to have fun and didn't care about logic. He simply felt good when he hurt someone. But today, he was going to teach this jerk a lesson on behalf of Immerse, Tongning, and even on behalf of this spoiled heir's parents. I'm sure everyone can see that from the moment Tongning stepped out of the hotel, she has been on her own. She did not go on any dates or meet with anyone. She simply walked around to kill some time because she had to return to Beijing. As for where this video came from, Fang Yu immediately contacted the hotel that Tongning was staying at the time and asked the hotel manager to explain. At that time, President Mo hired bodyguards from the hotel. To ensure Miss Tang's safety, our bodyguards normally carry pinhole cameras with them. They do not interfere with the privacy of our guests. They are simply used to record the surroundings of our guests. This is our hotel's usual practice, and all our VIPs are aware of it. Of course, we also have to accommodate them according to their needs. After the call ended, Fang Yu waved his hands at everyone. The truth should be clear by now. But, because of President Quan's reckless actions, Tongning was violently attacked online and scolded in all sorts of ways. President Quan, you must be heartless. Tongning has no feud with you, yet you forced a woman like this. Is bullying women the only thing you are capable of? Everyone knows that Tongning doesn't like to explain herself. She has always felt that she has a clear conscience. But, think about it. How would you feel after being wronged like this? The reporters below the stage also looked ashamed. I really want to ask you, what has Tongning done wrong to you? Why is it that every time something happens, she is attacked by everyone? After hearing this, Quan Yi stood up to leave. But Fang Yu held him back. Since the incident has blown up, Hai Rue has no intention of resolving it peacefully. The person that spread the rumors has already been invited to the police station for tea. In that case, President Quan, as the heir of a conglomerate, shouldn't you show your attitude after doing something so unmanly and bullying a woman? Actually, there's no need for that. After all, you are a famous spoilt brat, so it's normal for you to be so wasteful. In a little while, Hai Rue will settle this score with Star King. Quan Yi turned around and glared at Fang Yu. However, Fang Yu did not show a single trace of fear. Yet, the media continued to point fingers at Quan Yi. Most importantly, everyone in Beijing now knew that Quan Yi was a coward that only knew how to bully women. In particular, Fang Yu's last sentence completely trampled on Quan Yi's pride. If you have the ability, come and cause trouble for me. Fang Yu shook his head and acted frivolously. What's the point of looking for trouble for you? You only know how to bully women. Weak chicken. Everyone filled in the last two words on their own. Of course, after Quan Yi was embarrassed at such a big event, the people at Star King would have to walk with their tails between their legs and wear masks. Chapter 297. Quan Yi had framed Tongning, the almighty heir of Star King, the young master of the Quan family with a bright future, had actually framed a model, and this model turned out to be a woman. At this moment, not only the public, but even the internal staff of Star King were discussing. I feel so embarrassed. Star King has been completely disgraced by the spoilt heir. I don't think a man would bully a woman like this. Only a woman would make things difficult for another woman. Don't tell me the spoilt heir is actually a ladyboy? How did the chairman give birth to such a jerk? If I was him, I would have kicked him to death a long time ago in case he did something like this when he grew up. He has only framed a woman now. Who knows what he might do in the future? Why would a spoilt heir like him care about other people's feelings? Father Quan walked into Star King with a document in his hand. Hearing the whispers of his staff, his face turned red as he kicked open the office door. His secretary followed behind him in shock and asked in a trembling voice, "Chairman, should we go look for President Quan?" Father Quan took a deep breath and suddenly knelt down holding onto his chest, scaring his secretary so much that she immediately called an ambulance. Translator, Uni editor. Uni finally, her innocence was proven. At the same time, the words Tongning said to her fans that she wasn't familiar with President Quan were also posted online. A passerby innocently asked a fan, Why didn't Tongning explain herself earlier? If our Tongning explained herself, would you believe her? We are all women. Why is it that whenever you see a handsome male celebrity, you find a reason to support them, even if it means murder or arson? On the other hand, an innocent model like Tongning has to endure the malicious accusations and insults from her fellow women? The man was stunned by the question and did not respond. That's enough. We've had enough. Tongning has been slandered on everything along the way. The only thing she hasn't done is kneel down in front of the netizens. From now on, we will protect her. Yes, from now on, we will protect Tongning. We will never let her come to any harm again. Fans spontaneously formed the Tongning Global Anti-Defamation Team. Soon, it attracted tens of thousands of fans. As they had experience in the entertainment industry, they split up the work and turned the anti-defamation team into a system. Some people were in charge of slandering her, some were in charge of collecting information, and some were in charge of organizing Tongning's achievements since her debut. All in all, their establishment meant a lot to Tongning, because Tongning could feel that there were more and more people protecting her. At the same time, another big event took place on social media. The CEO of Rendezvous, Audiobook, had opened his own social media page. In an instant, countless fans followed and left messages. By 7 p.m., the number of fans had exceeded hundreds of thousands. This was an extremely shocking statistic. The thing that the fans were most concerned about was the reason why Audiobook had opened up this channel. However, at 8:19 p.m. that night, Audiobook finally released a photo. It was a photo from the night of Rendezvous's celebration dinner. It was a photo of him leaving with Tongning on his back. In the photo, Tongning lay quietly on top of Audiobook's body. Her eyes were sparkling as Audiobook looked at her with his back facing her. His gaze was gentle like water. Of course, not only did he put up the photo, but he also said, "She only has me." These simple and powerful words were a response to Quan Ye's slandering of Tongning. But it had shaken the entire entertainment industry. Oh my God, am I dreaming? Seriously? CEO Amo actually came out and made it public? I am so excited, so excited. I believe in love again. I love this couple so much. Who else could make the big boss of the entertainment industry their manager and bedwarmer? Tongning, you are amazing. So, this is the highest standard of PR at Rendezvous. Is he possessed by a wife-protecting demon? I suddenly feel like the spoiled heir is quite funny. It's so strange. Their social status is so far apart, yet I feel like they are compatible. Although I really want to ask about LM's wedding ring commercial and Feng Kai's interview. After seeing this post, I feel like the past is no longer important. I am going to dig up the little details of their love life. No one can stop me. Tongning, come out and show your face. I want to be in the same frame. I want to be in the same frame. Of course, Tongning had no way of satisfying her fans' requests. After all, she had no idea what was going on. Long Jia had browsed through the news and found Audiobook's homepage. Only then did she explode in anger as she gave Tongning a phone call. Tongning, what is it? Tongning felt helpless towards the alarmed Long Jia. Boss has revealed your relationship. Did you guys plan this beforehand? Long Jia's fingers trembled in excitement. What do you mean? Wait a minute. After speaking, Long Jia sent Audiobook's homepage to Tongning. I am so excited, really? Tongning remained on the phone as she clicked on the link Long Jia had sent her. After jumping to the homepage, she saw a photo of her and Audiobook. Most importantly, the time of the announcement was 8:19 p.m. It turned out Audiobook had been at the office so late because of this. Tongning, did you see this? Boss has announced to the entire world that he has placed a label on you. Ha ha ha. He's not afraid of another Quan Yi appearing. He's revealed it. He's revealed it. I'm going to look for Lu Che to open a bottle of red wine. After hearing this, Tongning let out a laugh. She didn't know why, but every time something good happened to her, Long Jia was more excited than anyone else. In fact, she was even more excited than she was. By the way, has boss returned home? Not yet, Tongning replied. Hurry and go look for him. What are you still doing at home? Hurry, I'm going to hang up. After putting down her phone, Tongning grabbed her jacket and handbag and left the house. On the way to Hairue, she gave Emoting a phone call. However, Emoting wasn't at Hairue. I'm downstairs at Hairue. Where are you? I'm at the hospital, Emoting replied. Elder Quan is in the hospital. Then, Star King sent someone to invite him. His condition isn't light. Plus, it has something to do with Star King's internal conflict. I will be home late. You should go home and get some rest, Emoting instructed. Will he be okay? Tongning asked nervously. After all, there were so many people at Star King. Yet Father Quan was asking Emoting to accompany him. This was a little unreasonable. He'll be fine. I've seen the announcement. Tongning relaxed as she said to Emoting, I originally wanted to wait until you got home, but since I've already called you, I thought I'd tell you in advance that I'm very happy. Mrs. Emo, the reason I did this was to make you happy, Emoting said. In a situation like that, I won't go look for you. I don't want to be a burden to you. Come home early. I'll wait for you. Although Tongning sounded generous, her heart was still filled with worry. Chapter 298. Father Quan was seriously ill. After entering the hospital, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. After waking up from his hospital bed, the first thing Father Quan did was ask his secretary to call a lawyer and send someone to Hairue to invite Emoting. As soon as the people from Star King heard about this, they all rushed to the hospital. Some told Father Quan to take care of himself, while others told him to give up his management rights. These people had always been ambitious. Father Quan was agitated as his stomach pain worsened. After seeing this, his secretary asked if he should contact Quan Yi. Father Quan waved his hand weakly. At this moment, he didn't want Quan Yi to see his current state. Inside the hospital room, a few shareholders were trying to convince Father Quan to give up his shares. At least, it was better than giving it to Quan Yi. However, Father Quan held on tightly without saying a word. His old face was filled with stubbornness and regret. If only his education towards Quan Yi hadn't failed so badly, if only he had placed more focus on educating his son, would things have been different today? Director Quan, for the sake of the bigger picture, you should agree and give up your management rights. If you hand Star King over to Quan Yi, we won't be able to rest easy. I'm not dead yet, Father Quan replied in a raspy voice. That's not what we meant. A moment later, Emoting entered the hospital room under the protection of his bodyguards. As soon as the shareholders saw Emoting, they couldn't help but ask cautiously, President Emo, what are you doing here? I invited President Emo here. Father Quan gestured for his secretary to help him up as he gestured for his lawyer to walk over. I single-handedly created Star King. It's true that I can't hand it over to my son because he is too disappointing. But I won't hand it over to you either. In order to protect Star King, I have decided to sell all my shares to Hairue and make Star King a part of Hairue. Before Emoting sat down, Father Quan retrieved a contract from his lawyer and handed it to Emoting. I know you are the only one that can make Star King stronger. So, Emoting, I am willing to sell my shares at the lowest price on the market. I wonder if you are interested? My only condition is, don't fire a single person from Star King. Emoting received the contract and casually flipped through a few pages. He suddenly felt Father Quan's stubbornness towards Star King. He would rather hand it over to an outsider than let his own people ruin it. Where is your son? I didn't let him down. He has to walk his own path in the future. Father Quan held back his tears as he shook his head. He knew that if Star King was handed to Quan Yi, it would eventually end up in Emoting's hands. Rather than let the Star Emperor suffer a great loss, it was better for him to hand it over now. At least in this way, he could rest assured. I am a businessman. I have no reason to reject an opportunity like this, Emoting replied. President Emo, I don't think this is appropriate. Star King's people immediately objected. I'm paying, and old Quan is selling his shares. What's wrong with that? Emoting asked, or are you saying that you all want the right to manage Star King? Don't tell me, as the CEO of Hyrule, that I can't control Star King? Sensing Emoting's power, the old men hoped that the spoilt heir would step out and stop them. But Quan Yi was still hiding on the yacht with no intention of returning to Beijing. President Emo, from now on, Star King will be in your hands. Elder Quan, as long as you don't regret it. Father Quan simply needed Emoting to take over. Regardless of whether Emoting wanted to continue maintaining the modeling agency or make a transition, Father Quan knew that Emoting would be able to make Star King even more glorious. So, he wasn't worried at all. What a pity. I'm worried about my son, but I can't take care of him forever. After hearing this, Emoting was speechless for quite some time. He was already married, so to a certain extent, he could understand how Father Quan felt. After all, he was going to be a father one day. Elder Quan, take care of yourself. Star Emperor, I'll leave it to you, Father Quan said solemnly. So, on that day, several big events happened in the entertainment industry. First, it was Hyrue's PR, then it was Emoting's announcement of his relationship, and now, there was a rumor that Hyrule was about to acquire Star King. Hyrule acquiring Star King. All of a sudden, the staff at Star King became restless. At this time, Father Quan instructed his secretary to pass on his message. Emoting agreed not to change the internal structure of Star King and not to fire a single employee. If that was the case, was Star King really going to fall under Hyrule? It didn't take long before the spoilt heir Quan Yi received news from his friend and rushed straight to the hospital. At this time, Hyrule and Star King's lawyers were in the middle of handling the paperwork. Quan Ye's eyes turned red as he pounced forward, but he was stopped by Emoting's bodyguards. Emoting, if you want revenge, come at me. Don't touch Star King and don't touch my father. If you were this sensible from the start, Star King wouldn't need to be in the hands of an outsider like me, Emoting retorted coldly. Over the years, have you made any contributions to Star King? Quan Yi breathed heavily as he clenched his fists. From today onwards, you are no longer the heir to Star King. Quan Yi looked at Father Quan in disbelief. However, Father Quan's face was pale as he handed a signed contract to Emoting. Emoting, from now on, I'll leave it to you. Dad, would you rather give Imperial Star to an outsider than give it to me? There are so many people in Imperial Star that need to be fed. People like you who only know how to eat, drink, and have fun can't feed them. Father Quan said stiffly, so, it's a father's fault for not teaching his children. Right now, I'm suffering retribution. I'll leave first. You and your son can catch up slowly. After receiving the contract, Emoting prepared to leave. However, Quan Yi pulled out a military dagger from his pocket and stabbed him in the stomach. Everyone was dumbfounded. Luckily, Emoting had quick reflexes and dodged in time. As a result, he only suffered a superficial wound on his waist. Although there was blood, it wasn't serious. Emoting's bodyguards immediately pinned Quan Yi to the ground. Behave yourself. Father Quan was agitated as he once again fainted from the pain. Meanwhile, Quan Yi lay on the floor and yelled angrily, "If you have the ability, kill me too. You think too highly of yourself." Emoting held onto the left side of his stomach as he knelt down in front of Quan Yi. After losing the protection of your father and Star King, let's see how you'll survive in Beijing. After speaking, Emoting stood up. As soon as Lu Che saw Emoting holding onto his stomach, he immediately ran over and asked, "President, is it serious? Do you want to go to the hospital?" "Don't tell Tongning." Lu Che was a little embarrassed, but he still said to Emoting, "I'm sorry, President. I've already given the madam a phone call. She's already on her way here. So, you should be good and go get your wound bandaged." Chapter 299. Thinking about Tongning's reaction when he caught a cold and had a headache, Emoting nodded his head. As for Kuan Yi, there's no need to call the police. Lu Che looked at the dazed Kuan Yi lying on the floor. He had no interest in stomping on him. He simply walked in front of Emoting and quickly called for a surgeon. Luckily, it was only a light wound. After a simple bandage, it was not a big problem. But Tongning was truly shocked. She rushed straight to the hospital without even putting on a disguise. She directly approached the front desk and asked for Emoting's whereabouts. Luckily, Emoting understood her well enough to wait for her on the first floor. As soon as she appeared, he immediately asked Lu Che to bring her over. Was that Tongning? I think so. The person she was talking to was President Imo? The nurses noticed the two and secretly pulled out their phones to take pictures of them. Tongning couldn't care less as she approached Emoting and asked, "Where are you hurt?" "My clothes are thick. It's just a small scratch," Emoting replied. "Then, I still want to see it." To avoid being surrounded by onlookers, Emoting led Tongning to a quiet room. He then sat on the bed, removed his coat and pulled up his suit and shirt. It's really just a small injury. The left side of Emoting's abdomen was wrapped in bandages. Although it was slightly red, it was indeed a small injury. Tongning let out a sigh of relief before she knelt down and helped Emoting put on his clothes. "Did you know that you scared me to death?" "It's fine now." Emoting held on to Tongning and comforted her as he hugged her. "What the hell is going on?" Emoting sat up straight. Just as he was about to explain the complicated situation, Lu Che suddenly knocked on the door and said, "President, Chairman Quan just passed away." Emoting immediately stood up and opened the door to look at Lu Che. Lu Che explained, "It turns out, not only did he have stomach cancer, he also had a brain hemorrhage. After all, he knew second uncle." "Tongning, let's go have a look," Emoting said as he turned around. No matter how many grudges they had in the past, at this moment, the deceased was the most important. Tongning nodded her head and walked over to Emoting's side. The two returned to Elder Quan's room. At this time, the atmosphere inside was filled with sadness. Kuan Yi still wanted to step forward and grab onto Emoting's shirt, but the bodyguards quickly pulled him away. "Emoting, are you satisfied? My dad's dead. Are you happy now?" Tongning looked at Kuan Ye's angry expression and widened eyes and said, "What's there to be happy about? Aren't you the one that wants him dead?" "What nonsense are you talking about? Then do you know that Elder Quan has stomach cancer?" Tongning asked sharply. "If you didn't want him to die a long time ago, would you still be fooling around all day?" You clearly know that he doesn't have any helpers by his side, but you still didn't take up the responsibility that a son should have. You did all kinds of things that crossed the line and stimulated his nerves. If this isn't wishing for him to die early, then what is? Why is your father willing to give Star King to Emoting? It's because he knows his son can't handle the responsibility of taking care of Star King. He doesn't want his life's work to go to waste. Just wait and see. Without your father, who would even spare a glance at you? Tongning's tone was harsh, but it was the truth. These words were like long silver needles stabbing into his heart. Of course, there was also another reason. Emoting had mysteriously received an injury. If Emoting hadn't reacted quickly enough, he would have been lying in bed by now. Kuan Yi had no way to refute. He simply turned around and propped himself up on the bed as he took a few more glances at his father. He then took heavy steps towards Emoting and said, "I will definitely take Star King back from your hands, and I will do it fair and square. I'll wait for you." After saying these words, Emoting also bowed towards Father Quan's body before turning around and leaving with Tongning. On the way home, Emoting looked at the woman beside him and gently rubbed her shoulder. "I originally wanted to give you a surprise today, but I ended up giving you a scare." "Did you really buy Star King?" "Yes, I bought the Quan family's shares. Of course, I am now the biggest shareholder of Star King." Emoting couldn't deny this. "You also have 15% of your share in the business. It's our shared assets. You know I don't care about things like that." Tongning didn't care. "But I remember Star King once blacklisted you." This was one of the reasons why Emoting insisted on buying the shares. At least, It could erase one of Tongning's unhappy memories, so it was worth it. Tongning leaned against Emoting's body, not daring to use too much force. Even though it was only a small wound, she was still careful. Late at night, inside a quiet house in the suburbs, a few computers sat in the damp living room. Meanwhile, the staff sitting in front of the computers had a worried look on their faces. They had spent so much effort and collected so much information. Yet, in the end, Emoting beat them to it by announcing their relationship. With the addition of Quan Ye's interference, the majority of the public opinion was now on Tongning's side. It wasn't a good time to expose any more scandals about Tongning. Even if they did, Hai Rui could easily handle the PR. Editor Lin, what should we do now? We've already missed the best opportunity. Announcing our relationship isn't like announcing our marriage. Editor Lin waved her hand to stop the others from speaking. What kind of person is Emoting? He's the CEO of Hai Rui. How long can he focus on liking someone? Look at the male artists that change their women every few days. Don't tell me Emoting can't compare to them. But what does this have to do with us? He'll just play with her for a few days. Once he gets bored, he'll just throw her away. Let's wait and see. Who told us to miss the best opportunity? Lin Chong sighed regretfully. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to go out and write some other news. Because they had been constantly spending money without any income, Huarong Studio was already running over capacity. But finding news? What news could be more shocking than Emoting's public announcement of his relationship with Tongning? Just as the reporters were worrying about exposing Tongning, Lin Chong suddenly received a secret guest. He didn't know how the man found him. All he knew was, in the dark car, the man handed him a check. I know you are the reporters from Huarong Studio that Fong Yu had been searching for so long. I'm here today because I have something to ask of you. Lin Chong used the dim light to see the numbers on the check and asked, what is it? I want to take over Hai Rui. So, I hope you can cooperate with me and work for me. The reason is simple. You are good at following people, and you will never betray me because of Emoting. Chapter 300. Take over Hai Rui. Lin Chong scoffed before replying. Although I don't want to admit it, Emoting is an outstanding leader. This is something that no one can deny. Plus, because of Emoting's existence, he can at least correct the unhealthy tendencies in the entertainment industry. But without Emoting, Hai Rui will simply be an entertainment company. The entertainment industry has always been about chasing after fame and fortune. Haven't you been following Tongning for fame and fortune as well? The man scoffed as he pointed out Lin Chong's hypocrisy. The man pointed out Lin Chong's hypocrisy in a deep and incisive voice. The entertainment industry I want is prosperous and competitive, not like Emoting, where everyone abides by their duties. Plus, did you really think that Emoting is fair and just? At least when it comes to Tongning, he is no longer the Emoting of the past. I need some time to think about it. Lin Chong handed the check back to the man. After all, I will be going against Emoting. I need to weigh the pros and cons. Up to you, the man replied nonchalantly. But don't blame me for not warning you. On the day that I take over Hai Rui, there will be no place for you in Beijing. Lin Chong wasn't stupid. Of course, he wasn't going to be scared by a few words. But now is indeed not the best time to deal with Tongning. After all, she had already been labeled as Emoting's woman. Plus, Hai Rui had just calmed down a mess. By the time the car arrived at Hyatt Regency, it was already midnight. The couple entered the house in silence. As soon as Tongning turned on the lights, Emoting stretched out his arms and hugged her. He then whispered in her ear, "Let me hug you like this for a little while." Tongning did not say a word. She simply felt that sometimes Emoting's shoulders were so heavy that it made her heart ache. Taking over Star King did not make him happy. After all, it had never been Emoting's ambition. In front of me, you can be fragile, Tongning said as she gently stroked Emoting's back. When you need me, I will be your most reliable shoulder to lean on. I can't believe Elder Quan died all alone. I suddenly feel scared. If you hadn't appeared by my side, perhaps, I would have ended up the same way. I would have died all alone. Tongning could feel Imoting's hands tightening around her. So, she removed his jacket and snuggled into his embrace. So loneliness is so scary. You're too tired. Let's take a shower and get some sleep. Tongning finally turned on the lights, held onto Imoting's hand, and returned to the bedroom with him. While she was helping Imoting run the water, she suddenly thought of a problem. She had always been clear about her goal. She had her own dream, to become an international supermodel. But Imoting? She had never heard him mention it before. Every day, other than being busy planning how to make others famous, he had never thought about himself. In fact, he had never done anything for himself. What are you thinking about? Imoting asked in a low voice as he entered the bathroom to find Tongning in a daze. I was thinking, is becoming the CEO of Hyrule your dream? Tongning turned her head and replied. Imoting removed his robe and froze on the spot. After entering the bathtub, he shook his head. No. What's that? Being a scriptwriter. Imoting laughed as he waved at Tongning. Come in. Tongning smiled as she also removed her robe and entered the bathtub. She then laid her head on top of Imoting's chest. Of course, before she did this, she took a look at the wound on Imoting's waist. I'll bandage it up for you in a moment. Imoting had achieved many people's dreams, but no one knew what he truly wanted. Tongning's guess was correct. Stupid definitely had something to do with Imoting. When she first heard Imoting tell the story, she could sense that Imoting's expression was completely different than when he was talking about other things. I haven't asked you yet. Have you already decided on the female lead for, stupid? Not yet. Imoting replied with his eyes closed. I haven't found a suitable one. Okay. Tongning responded with an okay and did not say anything else. After quite some time, she finally said to Imoting, I want to look at the script. Imoting seemed to have fallen asleep, so Tongning thought he didn't hear her. But, just as the couple returned to the bedroom, Imoting suddenly pulled out a script from his drawer and handed it to Tongning. Look at it when you have time. It's too late right now. Okay. Tongning nodded. By the way, can you give me your account and password for your social media account? I want to look at your messages. Imoting pulled out his phone, logged in his account and password, and handed it to Tongning. Tongning took a few glances at the phone before closing it and falling asleep with Imoting. But the next morning, Imoting's social media account once again exploded with activity. Tongning had left a message under his post. Of course, she was replying using Imoting's account, so it seemed like she was talking to herself. But the fans quickly understood. From the tone of the message, there was no doubt it was Tongning at that time. My heels were too thin and rubbed against my feet. Your President Imo told me to come up here, and I'll carry you. The fans were fed a mouthful of dog food. Seeing the interaction between the couple so early in the morning, their mood improved. I don't care. I'm going to be infatuated with a CP like this for the rest of my life. Tongning left a message at 1 a.m. What are they doing so late at night? Hey. Something big happened yesterday, and someone saw them at the hospital. There are photos online of Tongning going to the hospital without any makeup on. It seems President Imo was injured. Huh? Injured? Is it serious? Hayes, I really want to know about them, but I can't get any news from them. This feeling is so torturous. The fans below Imoting's account howled in pain. But they gave their blessings and had high hopes for the couple's relationship. According to the fans, the couple's mysterious relationship was definitely different from the hype created by other celebrities. It was obvious that the couple were going to spend the rest of their lives together. In reality, the internet had already uncovered a lot of details that showed the couple had been together for a long time. But Tongning did not use her relationship with Imoting to boost her status. This made many people believe that they were truly in love and that they weren't willing to waste their time on each other. In fact, Fans even went to ask the so-called entertainment industry bloggers. At this time, the entertainment industry blogger replied to his fans, within the industry, their relationship is already semi-public. Just by looking at President Mo's attitude, you can tell that it is true love. Tongning also loves President Mo. They are not putting on a show, it is as you can see. Bloggers have high hopes for this couple. If you don't believe me, I can swear that after 10 years, they will still be together and in love. Chapter 301. Over the next few days, Mo Ting began to work on Star King's acquisition. Tongning didn't want him to be too tired, so she put her own work on hold and handed all the domestic deals to Long Jie. Full sent a message from France, telling Tongning to be the first to see the costume design based on the female lead of Stupid. As soon as Tongning saw the costume, she suddenly thought of the character of the female lead. The female lead had never been educated. While she was washing dishes in a restaurant, she was discovered by a talent scout. After her debut, she lost control of her temper and was banned. But, because of a wealthy businessman, she returned to the film industry and dominated the title of Best Actress for 30 years. As for the male lead of Stupid, when she was offered a sugar daddy by a wealthy businessman, she didn't want to give her first time to a sugar daddy. So, she went to look for the male lead's father, a talented athlete, and had a one-night stand. On the surface, the character appeared to be willful her entire life, but in reality, her heart was filled with vicissitudes and complex emotions. Especially when she saw the costume designed by Foles, Tongning suddenly felt like the character had come to life. The female lead didn't have a lot of lines. So, whenever Tongning had nothing to do, she would memorize them at home. Sometimes, she would even practice in front of the mirror. One time, she was discovered by Long Jie, who was reporting to her. "What are you doing?" "Nothing," Tongning replied calmly as she closed the script. Long Jie walked up to Tongning relentlessly. However, she noticed Tongning was actually reading her script. Was she looking at the mirror, planning to change her style? "Do you want to act?" "Me? How could that be possible? I'm not from an acting school and have no foundation in acting." Tongning shook her head. The only reason she was practicing in front of the mirror was because she was very interested in this character. "You underestimate yourself." Long Jie waved her hand and sat down beside Tongning. "But, I'm here today because of this." Long Jie handed the invitation card to Tongning. "It's a Chanel perfume dinner. I've already rejected all the other unknown brands." "Okay." Tongning nodded. "Tongning, all the people looking for you these days are big names." "I'm so happy," Long Jie yelled excitedly as she pounced into Tongning's arms. "Especially after your relationship with Boss was revealed. There's already a long queue of people inviting the two of you to share a stage. Be honest, have you been trying to lose weight lately?" Tongning felt Long Jie had lost some weight. "I can't hide this from you. When I wasn't working with you, I went to fitness classes a few times. Not bad, right? Is it effective?" Long Jie stood up and spun around a few times. Tongning cleared her throat. When it came to Long Jie's tummy, "Why do you suddenly want to lose weight? Isn't it good to be a little fatter? You have to be plump to look good." Every time. Long Jie's face turned a little red as she returned to Tongning's side and whispered, "Every time we go to Lu Che's home, we kiss until the sky turns dark. Then, he suddenly goes to sleep on the sofa with a pained expression. It's probably because of my figure. Don't you know why he looks like he's in pain?" Tongning asked. "But I still want to be a little thinner. Which woman doesn't want to be perfect in front of the person they love?" "I don't think he'll mind. After all, he's already seen it." In reality, Long Jie could only be considered voluptuous, but that was how she wanted to look. Plus, your relationship can be considered stable. When will you settle down? How can it be so soon? Long Jie asked. But, thinking about how Tongning and Mo Ting got married as soon as they met, she couldn't help but laugh. "What I mean is, I want to enjoy my freedom for a little longer. Enough talking. I've already given you the invitation card. The time is 7 p.m. tomorrow at Gold Hotels. I will pick you up at 6 p.m. After speaking, Long Jie stood up and said to Tongning, Lu Che wants to go to a dessert shop on the west side of the city. I will go buy it for him right now. Go ahead. Be careful on the road. A woman in love really couldn't be messed with. As she watched Long Jie leave, Tongning shook her head. The shop only sold 100 desserts a day. If she went at this time, she wasn't sure if there would be any left. Thinking about how many times Lu Che had mentioned it, Long Jie couldn't help but speed up. At this time, an old lady with a dog suddenly crossed the road. Long Jie was so scared that she immediately swerved and crashed into the side of the road. Long Jie's head smashed into the car window. After a moment of dizziness, she directly fainted. When she woke up again, she was at the hospital. Lu Che stood in front of the hospital bed discussing her injuries with the doctor. A moment later, the doctor left. Lu Che leaned over and asked, Are you awake? Do you feel unwell anywhere? Long Jie shook her head. Do you know how busy I've been over the past few days? Did I waste your time? Not only have you been busy, I was also scared half to death by you. Lu Che couldn't help but sigh. You're not usually this impatient. I wanted to buy you desserts, but I was afraid the shop would close, Long Jie explained. You've mentioned it a few times already. I know you've been running around Star King over the past few days and haven't had much rest. I simply wanted to cheer you up a little. Lu Che let out a gentle laugh. All of a sudden, he no longer felt tired. I often mentioned desserts to you because I wanted to tempt you not to go on a diet. It wasn't because I wanted to eat them. Long Jie. So, I was the one who asked for the accident. Not really. Lu Che leaned over and whispered in Long Jie's ear. At least it gave me half a day off. Long Jie threw a punch at him, but Lu Che caught her fist. Little fatty, let's go home. Okay. Lu Che helped Long Jie up from the bed. At this time, the old lady that caused Long Jie's car accident appeared in the hospital room with a dog on her leash. She apologized to Long Jie. I'm sorry, young lady. I'm getting old and can no longer hold this dog. I'm fine too, Long Jie quickly replied. Don't take it to heart. I've already paid for your medical fees. It's best to have a clear conscience. But I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of this dog anymore. Long Jie looked at the old lady's wrinkled hands. It was indeed difficult to take care of a large dog, so she suggested, Why don't you let me take care of it instead? Lu Che was helpless against Long Jie. The two obviously didn't have much time, but he couldn't bear to hurt Long Jie's enthusiasm. In reality, this was the Long man in his heart. No matter what she experienced, no matter what the outside world was like, she was always curious and passionate about the world. So, in the end, the couple took the dog home. But, after returning home, Long Jie began to worry. We should buy a kennel. If it sleeps on your sofa tonight, where will you sleep? Lu Che hooked his arm around her shoulder and led her into the bedroom. Tonight, I'll sleep on the bed. Long Jie nervously crossed her arms in front of her chest. You're not allowed to have sex before marriage. What if you're the one that wants to sleep with me? Lu Che teased. Honestly, during this period of time, Lu Che had become a lot more enlightened. Long Jie couldn't help but lower her head. In reality, she really wanted to. She was already 30 years old, yet she still acted like an 18-year-old girl. They were both adults, but she couldn't just slap herself in the face and ask him to sleep with her. Chapter 302. After showering, Long Jie nervously lay in bed, researching how to raise a dog. Meanwhile, Lu Che, who was lying beside her, was working on his laptop with his hair dripping wet. Long Jie leaned in closer to have a look. It was filled with reports about Star King. Lu Che turned and looked at her. Can you understand it? Long Jie shook her head. Boss, after taking over Star King, will you change the way Star King operates? Star King will not be merged into Hyrule. Star King was bought using the CEO's personal assets. Plus, before Star King could make a move, Elder Quan got into an accident. So, Star King does not need to make any big changes at the moment. Does that mean Boss will be more tired from now on? Probably. Lu Che nodded. After speaking, he turned off his laptop and grabbed a towel to dry his hair. Long Jie's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Lu Che had already finished his work. Were they really going to have a chat under the covers? That would be too naive and a waste of an opportunity. But she didn't want to sleep with a man like this. After drying his hair, Lu Che returned to the bedroom. Seeing Long Jie nervous, he turned off the bedside lamp. Long Jie let out a sigh of relief. However, Lu Che laughed. When you had a crush on me, didn't you take every opportunity to get close to me? Am I no longer attractive to you? Long Jie turned off her laptop and looked shyly at Lu Che's body as she covered her eyes. Weren't you the same when you had a crush on me? That's why I took every opportunity to kiss and hug you. Lu Che threw away the pillow and propped himself up to lie down. Seeing Long Jie covering her eyes with her hands, he couldn't help but mock. If you want to look, then look openly. Once Star King's business officially starts, I may end up sleeping in the office. You won't be able to look even if you want to. Hearing Lu Che's words, Long Jie suddenly lay down on top of Lu Che's body. Then, I should take the opportunity to hug you a little more. Don't hug me too tightly. I might lose control. Lu Che's voice was a lot lower. Forget it. Not when facing a body like mine. Lu Che's eyes darkened as he flipped over and pressed Long Jie under his body. Hey, we agreed. But I really don't have any self-control when it comes to you. After speaking, Lu Che's kiss landed on her lips. As he kissed her, he said to Long Jie, "You're already 30. Are you planning to save your first time until you're 31? I don't want to." Long Jie shook her head. After being kissed by Lu Che, she was so dizzy she even forgot her surname. "Then I want you tonight. What can you do?" Long Jie's eyes grew wide. She suddenly realized Lu Che, who was still a primary school student just a few days ago, was suddenly about to graduate from university. I, don't be nervous. It's no big deal. We'll register tomorrow. Aren't you afraid of regretting it? Long Jie suddenly relaxed. Deep down, she still felt a sense of inferiority. But Lu Che didn't mind. We haven't been together for long and haven't experienced much. What if you meet someone better in the future? What would you do? You are the best. But what if your parents don't like me in the future? This was Long Jie's biggest worry. Lu Che couldn't understand this. I'm the one you're spending the rest of your life with, not my parents. As soon as Long Jie heard this, her face turned red as she turned her head. In that case, be gentle. I'm also new. Lu Che laughed. What should I do? Lu Che gently lifted Long Jie's robe and leaned over. Tomorrow, let's register our marriage. I can't wait anymore. I want to live with you officially and do whatever I want with you. Luckily, they were both invisible and weren't affected by the industry. Even when it came to registering their marriage, they didn't need to worry about the media. Long Jie almost suffocated from the kiss. Lu Che lifted her hands above her head and intertwined his fingers. But even though they were already naked in front of each other, he still did not take the final step. After we register our marriage, I won't let you go. Long Jie's face turned red as she snuggled into Lu Che's embrace. All of a sudden, she felt Lu Che was more manly than anyone else. After all, not everyone could stop at a time like this. Of course, she had no idea Mo Ting was also part of the team. In the middle of the night, the big golden retriever that they brought home suddenly started barking. Long Jie was afraid it would wake Lu Che up, so she quickly climbed out of bed and sat down with the dog. She then pulled out some canned food from the fridge and opened it for the dog. Shoo! Be quiet. Don't wake him up. In reality, Lu Che was already awake. He simply looked at Long Jie from behind as he crossed his arms and smiled. Silly girl. After daybreak, at Huarong's studio. Because he had spent too much money over the past few days, Lin Chong was currently worrying about cash flow. He could continue to carry on, but what about the staff he hired? Including Charlene, she was completely different from what he had originally promised. Editor Lin, from the time I started working, you haven't given me a single cent of my salary. My child is about to be born. I need this money. Editor Lin, although I don't have a child, I'm running out of money myself. Chong Lin looked at his reporters and let out a sigh. He then said to everyone, "Give me some time. I will definitely pay you all your salaries." "Okay then, I'll wait a little longer." The young reporter left Editor Lin's office dejectedly. After thinking for a moment, Editor Lin finally pulled out the mysterious man's contact details and gave him a phone call. "I agree to help you." As soon as the man heard this, he laughed. "Wouldn't it have been better if you had agreed from the start?" "In that case, let's meet up and discuss in detail." Okay. Since he had decided to sell it, Lin Chong didn't plan to hide it anymore. He pulled out all the evidence he had collected and handed it to the man to see if he could use it in other situations. It had to be said, Tongning's luck was really good this time. But, from now on, she might not be so lucky with everything. Meanwhile, Tongning had no idea that Long Jie and Lu Che had gone to register their marriage. She simply focused on preparing for the Chanel perfume dinner. Over the past 2 days, Imo Ting had been too busy, so she simply mentioned the dinner to him. She didn't want to distract him. In reality, she had already considered getting someone else to be her manager. But Imo Ting immediately gave up on the idea. "I can't trust someone else to manage you." Tongning had no choice but to compromise. "In that case, I'll go to the Chanel dinner on my own. If anything unexpected happens, give me a call." With Tongning's current status, no one would dare to cause trouble for her. But when she actually arrived at the dinner, the situation was completely different from what she imagined. Chapter 303. There will be plenty of actors and celebrities attending Chanel's gala tonight. But, with your current popularity, I don't think you lose out to any of them. On the way to the gala, Long Jie knelt down in front of Tongning and helped her tidy up her dress. However, Tongning noticed that Long Jie had also dressed up a little. "By the time the gala ends, it will be around 11 p.m. Will you still be going on a date with Lu Che?" Long Jie smiled mysteriously with a proud expression. "Yes, can I?" "In that case, you should leave early. Ting will come pick me up later," Tongning said as she held onto her handbag. "We're almost there. Hurry and get ready. This is the first time you and boss have appeared together in public. Do you think the media will let you off?" Long Jie tidied up Tongning's silver dress. After the van stopped, she finally opened the door. Celebrities walked down the red carpet one after another. By this time, Tongning had already gotten used to the dark cameras and flashing lights. Even without Imo Ting by her side, her brilliance was still irresistible. "Look, the person walking down the red carpet is our Tongning. Her silver dress really complements her elegant and noble aura. Let's welcome Tongning." They were in a 5-star hotel, so the red carpet wasn't long. It was only a few meters long. Afterwards, Tongning approached the autograph wall and signed her name to the cameras. She then handed the pen in her hand back to the host. "Once again, let's welcome Tongning. Please enter the venue." The luxurious hotel lobby was decorated with pink and champagne-colored roses. Below the stage, the names of the guests were written on the seats and bracelets made out of fresh flowers were placed on the seats. Tongning sat in her seat. On her left was the popular A-list actress, Jiang Yun. However, she had already married into a wealthy family. On her right, the person hadn't arrived yet. However, she wasn't from the entertainment industry. Her name was Qi Xinyan. Jiang Yun arrived first. Her aura was outstanding. If Tongning was described as cold, then Jiang Yun had a hint of otherworldly aura. Tongning nodded politely at the man, and the man smiled back. At this time, the guest on Tongning's right finally arrived. Tongning and Jiang Yun turned their heads and looked to their right. The guest on the right obviously didn't expect to see Tongning. Tongning could see the surprise in the guest's eyes. But, from what she could remember, they didn't seem to know each other. "Miss Tongning, I am a fan of yours." Qi Xinyan stretched out her hand and revealed an impeccable smile. Of course, she wasn't someone from the entertainment industry because that would lower her level. She was the heiress of a tycoon. How could she possibly be an exposed actress? She was the heiress of a tycoon. How could she possibly be an actress? Tongning couldn't see any kindness in the woman's eyes. but it wasn't to the point of becoming enemies. So, Tongning stretched out her hand, grabbed onto the woman's slender hand, and shook it gently. Afterwards, the man quickly pulled his hand away as Tongning furrowed her brows. Qi Xinyan maintained her polite smile as she stood up and excused herself to go to the bathroom. Tongning was a little confused. At this time, a clear voice drifted into her ears. This Qi Xinyan is the heiress of GJ Corporation. She has a high opinion of herself and doesn't like to interact with women from the entertainment industry. After shaking hands with you a moment ago, she is now going to wash her hands. Tongning turned and looked at Jiang Yun. She nodded her head to show that she didn't mind. She comes from a higher status, so it's understandable. I remember that you also come from a century-old perfume family. In terms of background, you may not be better than her. With the mention of the Tang family, Tongning's expression turned even colder. In fact, her voice sounded a little cold. I am just a model. Jiang Yun smiled without saying a word. At a place like this, they were just talking to each other. After all, they were all from different agencies. Who would want to be honest with them? A moment later, Qi Xinyan returned to her seat. At this time, the distance that Tongning emitted was getting stronger. At times like this, she was usually telling people to stay away. However, Qi Xinyan's gaze was too intense. Every now and then, it would land on Tongning, making her feel extremely uncomfortable. Halfway through the dinner, Emoting suddenly gave her a phone call. Tongning glanced at the caller ID, stood up and headed to the bathroom with her phone. Around what time will it be over? I'll come pick you up. Around 11 p.m., Tongning replied. Okay, I'll leave Hai Rue at 10:30 p.m. Tongning hung up the phone and returned to her seat. Afterwards, Qi Xinyan smiled and asked, Is that President Imo? Hearing Qi Xinyan's question, Tongning felt extremely uncomfortable. It was as if she and Imo Ting were very familiar with each other. Please send my regards to President Imo. Tongning's gaze suddenly changed from polite to sharp. In fact, it even contained a hint of ridicule. Miss Qi seems to have an inexplicable sense of hostility towards me. Go back and ask President Imo. He should know best. Qi Xinyan's I'm his old love expression made Tongning feel a little annoyed. But she was never one to show her emotions on her face. Of course, she couldn't possibly suspect Imo Ting just because of one sentence from Qi Xinyan. It was never her style to suffer a loss. Just as Jiang Yun thought Tongning was once again helpless against Qi Xinyan, Tongning suddenly pulled out her phone from her handbag and dialed Imo Ting's number right in front of the two. Ting. Huh. Imo Ting's voice sounded from the other end of the phone with a deep and charming tone. Do you know Qi Xinyan? Tongning asked straightforwardly. Who is that? Imo Ting was a little surprised as he asked back. Tongning let out a gentle laugh as she put down her phone. Qi Xinyan's expression did not look too good when she heard who. It seems President Imo sure has a short memory. When you get home, ask him if he remembers who his assistant called at the Civil Affairs office on August 19th. After hearing Qi Xinyan's words, Tongning finally understood a little. At the time, Imo Ting had also gone to get married, but the bride did not arrive. So, it was Qi Xinyan. But if Imo Ting said he didn't know her, then he didn't know her. As for why it was Qi Xinyan, Tongning was going to ask a certain someone when she got home. But now, he has never remembered unimportant people or things. After hearing this, Qi Xinyan did not get angry. She simply leaned in closer to Tongning and said, According to Imo Ting's family background, there is no way he would marry you. You should be aware of your own limitations because you will never be able to help him with his career. Plus, I'm sure you know better than me how dirty a female model is. Qi Xinyan expected Tongning to fly into a rage out of humiliation. But Tongning remained calm. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.